Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Enlace Media Labs and Texas A&M. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to Texas A&M San Antonio, where we are hosting a live election night from our Enlace Media Labs here in the heart of San Antonio, in the city that is known for rich in its history and diverse community. To witness something that is happening around the world, around the country, as Americans head to the polls for election night today. It's been an honor for us to bring this show to you. We're going to be giving you a lot of the updates going on in the city of San Antonio and around the country. As we all know, two of our candidates, Vice President Kamala Harris and President Donald Trump, will be going head to head in this election cycle of 2024. Not only that, San Antonio has some very key races around the city in some certain precincts that will be deciding, and what we will be monitoring and watching is going to be up in the north part of San Antonio. We are going to do our best to bring you updates from all four corners of one of the largest cities in the United States of America, a very crucial spot for Central Texas. San Antonio is mixed with cultures and traditions. It stands for its microism and all the American narrative that comes with everything that San Antonio involves. Its bustling river walks, its historic missions, the vibrant art scenes, and the innovation hubs that the city has really put together in the last couple of years. It has grown and grown and grown. And with that being said, a lot of these proposals that we are going to be monitoring throughout the city with a lot of our reporters is going to be crucial for this deciding night. Now, at A&M San Antonio University, at Texas A&M San Antonio University, we are very blessed and to have this opportunity to bring this to you. It's going to be a student-run organization. We have a lot of folks behind the scene. It's not just going to be me, but we're going to have some special guest reporters. We're going to be breaking this down into the last 4 hours of this election night as we are currently going live right now. Some polls have already closed around the country, with Indiana, Kentucky, New Hampshire being heavily contested, North Carolina being looked at. And we're going to be bringing you some of those projections, including some of the major Senate races around the country and around the city. In Texas, we're going to bring it back a little bit locally. We have two major races that we're going to be monitoring, not only just how San Antonio is going to come out and decide, but as well as who will and who shall be some of our new sheriff appointees. A lot of congressmen and representatives are going to be up for re-election, and some of them will be challenging a lot of our folks that are going to be coming in. With this, we're going to take a quick little break, and we're going to be bringing in one of our professors of the university, and we're going to be bringing you a lot more information right after this. Dr. Brownlee, come on in, please. Cam, stand and kick out.
There. How about that?
2, 1, 2, testing.
Does that work?
Yeah, we're going to be throwing out. Cam, just stand by. We're going to throw it at you. We'll come up with some updates. You got something right now?
Yeah.
Okay, you're good to go? Breathe, Cam, you good? Yeah, Cam's tall. We need to adjust that one.
Yeah, stop being tall. Be less tall. It's about having goals.
Our professor of communications. Associate professor of communications.
Yeah, communication.
You all ready?
Communication.
Yes.
Associate.
Ready? Let me know when it's live.
And with us, one of the biggest honors and one of the folks behind the scenes to make this possible is going to be one of our professors, as we know him affectionately here at Texas A&M San Antonio. But I'm going to let him do the introduction. Dr. Brantley, as we lovingly know you here, Dr. Brantley, welcome to Texas A&M San Antonio Live Election Night.
Well, thank you very much, Benji. Good evening, everybody out there. I would also like to welcome you to tonight's coverage of Election Night 2024. My name is Brian Brantley. I am a professor here in the communication program here at A&M San Antonio. So the show that we're going to be bringing you tonight is something that I've been thinking about rather a lot for the last 2 years, very literally since Election Night 2022. As I was walking off campus that night, I saw that our journalism program, the sum of its coverage of the midterm elections was one reporter with access to our newspaper's Twitter account, and that was it. And I knew then, and I've had confirmed, I think for me now, that we could do better. So that's what we're doing here tonight. So what is it that we are bringing you here tonight? Well, let me start by telling you a little bit about what we do here at A&M San Antonio. Our primary focus here in the communication program for the 15 years that I've been working here has been journalism. We teach our students the skills, we teach them the discipline, we teach them the judgment that we think that they'll need in order to go out and be professional journalists. So while they're here with us, they get as many chances as we can give them to showcase their work outside of class time. And usually that's in the form of a contest for students who work for our school paper, The Mesquite, or contests for students who work for our magazine at Espejo. Tonight, that opportunity outside of class is going to take the form of an entirely student-run live election night newscast. We are all extremely excited. In fact, I think that's an understatement to say that we are all extremely excited. So before we well and truly get started with this, I have some other stuff I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you about our mission for tonight, our guiding mission. I'm going to tell you about the resources that we're going to use in order to accomplish that mission. And I'm going to tell you some of what you can expect from our coverage tonight. So our mission for tonight has 3 parts to it. First, to provide local coverage. Second, to be informative. And third, to be anti-inflammatory. So I'm going to start with the first part. We're going to provide as much local coverage as we can because, quite frankly, it often gets either ignored or in some other way missed. So while we will definitely report important non-local updates when they occur, the presidential race, obviously, any shifts in the balance of power, the U.S. House or the U.S. Senate, obviously, but we will do that after we make sure that we've reported all of the city and state races that we are tracking. So that's our first part. Second part of our mission, we're going to be informative because, to my way of thinking, the best way that a news outlet can serve its community, and that is the job of a news outlet, is to serve its community, is to tell them what has happened, to make sure that everything that we say has been established as fact before we say it. In fact, one of the things we're not doing tonight is calling any races for anyone or making any kind of projections. When we tell you that somebody has won a state, when we tell you that some race has been won, it is going to be because a professional news organization that is not run by students has made that call, has made that projection. And quite frankly, they know what they're doing better than we do, so we'll let them do that heavy lifting. So we're not doing that. We are only reporting what other people have done. Third, we are going to try our very best to be anti-inflammatory. We've seen a lot of what I think could be interpreted as inflammatory news coverage over the last 4 years, over the last 8 years, over the last 20 years. And what I've noticed is the more that a newsroom can be seen as being happy, or being sad, or being relieved, or being angry based on who's winning or who's losing a race, the easier that makes it for people to get angry at that newsroom and to dismiss the things that that newsroom reports. Now, we here at A&M San Antonio are against making people angry, and we are against making them dismiss us. So the things that we do and the things that we don't do tonight will be with that in mind. So that's our mission for tonight. Now, how are we going to accomplish that mission? First, by using the best resources that we know about. So in addition to checking government resources that keep track of reported vote totals, for example, the Texas Secretary of State's website, we'll be relying a lot on a website called Decision Desk HQ, which for years has provided not only accurate results, but also quick and reliable projections for races all around the country. We will also be using one local television source, KSAT 12, San Antonio's ABC affiliate. So when we need information above and beyond what those resources can provide to us, then we will rely on the social media platform X, formerly known as Twitter. A great many news organizations and political campaigns use that platform to share information, and so we'll report to you any of that information that we find that we think will be relevant to you and that passes our fact-checking process. So those are the resources we're going to use. And now I will close my little opening segment here by telling you what you can expect from our coverage tonight. First and foremost, you can expect transparency. I've already told you why we're doing this. I've told you how we're doing this. And the reason why I've made a point to tell you those things is to help remove any doubt about any potential hidden agendas or ulterior motives or anything like that. We want for you to know as clearly as possible our process so that you will know that you can trust that process. In addition, our entire team believes in the importance of not showing any bias in any direction. We were discussing this, in fact, just a little while ago. It's maybe not going to be possible for student reporters to get rid of every single scrap of bias from tone of voice, from language, but that is our goal. And as we catch it, we will stop it. So beyond that quality of transparency, what you will be able to expect from our coverage tonight is a night of exceptional student work. Other than me, the only people you're going to see tonight are students who volunteered to help us take on this project because they are passionate, not only about politics, local and otherwise, but also about writing and reporting the news. So now, once I get done here, I'm going to let our students start their night of coverage. We want to extend our sincere thanks to all those of you who have tuned in already, and we think that you'll like what you see.
It's been an absolute pleasure trying to bring this whole project put together, and it's been really good to see how the students, the staff, our professors, and everyone has actually made this possible for us, something that we would have never thought about, but here we are. So folks, again, to bounce off you, Dr. Brownlee, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure for you to lead us on this endeavor, and we are very proud, and I'm thankful to be part of this project and to bring you all this information. Now, let's just kick this off here before we get all our information going through. Some close here at 6:30 have already closed, 7 o'clock. We're going to be moving into the 7 o'clock hour. Some states have been closed. With a little bit more than that, we're going to be giving it now. We're going to be sending it out to one of our reporters over to Mr. Cameron Colwell, who's going to be giving you a little bit more of these updates.
Yes, thank you, Benji. That's right. Good evening, everyone. We have
I stay on.
already finalized the results, and those states are Indiana, Kentucky. Excuse me. Thank you, Benji. That's right. That's right. And good evening, everyone. We have some states that have already finalized their numbers. Those states are Indiana, Kentucky, Vermont, South Carolina, and West Virginia. Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, and South Carolina have all gone to President Donald Trump, while Vermont has gone to Vice President Kamala Harris. With that update on your national election, I'm Cameron Caldwell.
Cameron, thank you so much for that, Cameron. It's a great job that you've been doing out there. As you can see, we appreciate you bringing out those reports. And some polls have already been closed. The magic number that we're looking at, that everybody's going to be looking at today, is going to be that electoral vote. And so far, from what we've been seeing, just like Mr. Cameron has been telling you, some of these updates have already been coming from some of our sources. We know that Kentucky has been projected to be called with 8 electoral votes, has been called for for President Donald Trump, as well as Indiana and West Virginia. Virginia and North Carolina right now is projected to be leading by Ms. Vice President Kamala Harris, and we also are awaiting a lot more when it comes down to other polls closing. Now, when it comes down to it, 270 is going to be the magic number when it comes down to the electoral votes. First one, as we know, to get there is going to be winning the presidential race. As we've been seeing throughout the night, as our information personnel and our students have been bringing a lot of the information, it's going to be a tight, contested race, but it's going to be exciting. And I guarantee you there's going to be some states that are going to be tossed up, some that are going to go differently than what we anticipated, but it's definitely going to be a night of history as Americans have gone to the polls. A couple facts that everybody has been seeing has been about the early voting. The early voting has been great so far for what we've been seeing and being reporting from all of our that are bringing in information from the corporate news and from our local news, as well as independent news. It has been a historic turnout for some of these early voters on both sides of those Republican and Democrat side. So that is already being seen as effective. One of the things that everybody's going to be monitoring as well, not just the turnout, but the results, but is also who's going to be going to these voting booths and who's actually going to be showing in person. I've spoken to so many folks, they love to romanticize the day of election. Myself truly ended up going early to voting. I was surprised to see that there was a line from previous years that I've had voted. So the night tonight is going to be about those that are going to be about the same day, election day votes. Again, just to reiterate, and I think what I'm seeing here with 11 electoral votes right now at 22% reporting according to our affiliates, Donald Trump has taken the lead in Indiana, as well as in New Hampshire. That's going to be one of those states that's going to be very well monitored. And I'm also even going to throw in New York and New Jersey. I know, according to these resources that we've been looking at, New York and New Jersey is going to be very interesting for the night. It's one of those things where America is going to go out to vote, and they're going to find their topic that they've connected with their candidate, and they're going to cast that vote for their president of choice. So far, from what we're seeing in some of these results coming in here in the second hour of elections, has already some quick results. Just to confirm some of these closing polls, some polls began closing at 5 o'clock. So at 6:30 when we came on, some results have already started to be counted. Some of the states that have already closed at 5 that we're reporting here are Indiana, Kentucky, the toss-up part of Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, and Vermont will be have closed at 6 o'clock. At the 6:30 is going to be North Carolina, Ohio, and West Virginia. So these are a bulk of states that have closed early at Central Time, 5 and 6 o'clock on these Central Times. San Antonio, now bringing it back to San Antonio, have casted out the votes already. Folks are out there that have gone into their precincts, into their polling places to go cast their votes. On the line today is going to be a lot of proposals. I know where in one of the proposals that's going to be put out for East Central High School is a tax increase. Folks around the city have already been put on taxes, and the biggest thing that's going to be on the note from what we've been gathering from a lot of folks is how are these high taxes and these propositions going to affect the community that they are currently involved in. One of the big precincts that I personally am going to look into is the northern part of San Antonio, Precinct 3, where it's going to be Ms. Susan Corbell and Mr. Moody out there in Precinct 3. Why? Precinct 3 of San Antonio is one of the largest precincts in the city. It goes from Alamo Heights and extends all the way into Helotes. Big chunk of the northern part of San Antonio is residing up there. From what we know on Precinct 3 is going to be the housing, and it's going to be the construction, as well as water resources and communities of home communities being built in the city. San Antonio has been seeing a vast increase in construction and population growth when it comes down to the city. From what I've been gathering and informing, and from what they've been showing, San Antonio soon will be one of those cities that's probably going to break into the top 5. Currently, if I'm not mistaken, and we're going to get our folks to verify me, it's in the top 7 largest cities in the United States of America. But with the influx that we've seen in our city for local San Antonians, it's going to affect major parts of the north, south, east, and the west part of San Antonio, Texas. For us here in San Antonio, Texas A&M Texas A&M University San Antonio, it's going to be one of those things that we're going to be watching, because it's growing quickly down here. And if you move down to if you're driving down 410, any part of this section, there's going to be construction left and right of 410, and it is quickly, vastly growing. So with that, I'm going to get a couple more updates here from what I am looking at into our maps. And this, again, these are our sources from that we are going to be using tonight with KSAT, as well as some of these coming at the top of the hour at 7 o'clock. We're going to have more cities, a very big chunk of the states in the country will be closing these polls at 7. San Antonio, Texas themselves is going to be having these polls from 7 to 8, and I anticipate folks to be out there voting for these candidates. Another race that I want to look into that we're going to analyze later with our reporters is going to take between Mr. Lujan and the opposing candidate from the Democrats over there. It's going to be one of those tight races that everybody's going to be talking in San Antonio about. Very contested race, very tight race. But bringing it back to the Democrat candidate Corbell and Mr. Moody, the Republican candidate, over in Precinct 3, that is anticipated to go in a very tight race when it comes down to who it is. Now, historically, the northern side of San Antonio, that precinct, historically in the past, has gone Republican. However, in recent years, it has been projected, and it might be even anticipated or even suggested, that this could be the year that they might be able to be going blue. So all eyes are going to be on that precinct in San Antonio, Texas. Now, with that said, so many proposals for school education, railroad commissioners are going to be up for grabs, and I'm going to touch on the last part, the Senate race of Texas between Senator Ted Cruz and Democrat opponent, escapes my name right now. I cannot remember his name for right now. Mr. Albright. So Colin Albright, excuse me for that one. It's just a little lapse on that one. But Mr. Albright and Mr. Cruz are going to be in a very tight race today. As we all know, have we been seeing in some of the recent elections, Mr. Albright has been really putting a lot of work into fighting for that Senate seat around the country. And I bring that up because around the country, we're also going to be monitoring the Senate races around the country, because it's not just the presidential race that is up for grabs, but as well as the Senate race that's going to be put in play. So for right now, as we reach into our second hour of broadcast here at Texas A&M San Antonio, we're going to be taking a quick little break here to get ourselves ready into the second hour as polls begin to close in Florida, Alabama, and Connecticut. And one of the major states that we're going to be looking at moving on into our number 2 of our broadcast will be New Jersey, New Hampshire, and the big battleground that everybody's been talking about, Pennsylvania. So moving on into our second hour, stay tuned. We're going to bring it to you, have a little quick break with this announcement from our university, and we'll be switching out for our second hour of our broadcast. Good, let's go.
House 118, and just take our time. Yes, Benji, that's right. Good evening, everyone. For this second hour of coverage, my name is Cameron Caldwell. I'm joined here today with
Novanka Gomez, and we are so excited to be with you all tonight, not only making history in our country possibly, but definitely making history with our school, with our first live stream coverage of election night for the 2024 election.
That's right, Novanka. At the top of this hour, we have a number of states that have closed the polls, most notably swing states like Pennsylvania and New Hampshire. We have currently just went over the results from the closed polls in states like South Carolina and South Carolina and Vermont. And Novanka, maybe you could talk a little bit about what the swing states mean in this election, like Pennsylvania, for example.
Of course. So Pennsylvania is considered a swing state in the 2024 election for several reasons, but I'll touch on a few. Most notably, Pennsylvania has had a history of fluctuating between Democratic and Republican candidates in presidential elections. For example, it voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and Joe Biden in 2020 by narrow margins. Also, Pennsylvania holds significant sway in the Electoral College with 19 electoral votes. This makes it a crucial target for both parties.
Absolutely, Novanka. It seems like this election is definitely going to be one that is going to come down to these swing states. But bringing it back locally here, let's go ahead and jump into one of the local elections. Let's dive into the upcoming Texas Railroad Commission race, which is the key to Texas's energy policies like oil and gas regulation and environmental oversight. Even though the name suggests railroads, the commission's primary role is regulating oil and gas and pipelines. This year, Republican incumbent Christy Craddock, Democrat candidate Catherine Colbert, Libertarian Hawk Dunlap, and Green Party candidate Eddie Espinosa are competing for the spot. Now, Novanka, let's get into a little bit about these candidates' positions.
Of course. So let's start with Christy Craddock, who's been on the Railroad Commission since 2012 and currently serves as its chair. Craddock, from Midland, Texas, brings a strong pro-industry stance to her campaign. She's focused on maintaining Texas's leading position in energy production and opposes increased federal regulations, which she argues could hinder industry's growth and affect jobs. Craddock is also known for streamlining processes like permitting to support efficient operations within the sector. She's positioned herself as a defender of Texas's energy independence and has even spearheaded updates in the Commission's IT systems to better handle permitting and data access.
That's absolutely right, Novanka. And Craddock emphasizes her experience as a crucial factor to running, particularly given Texas's economic reliance on the energy sector itself. However, she's faced a lot of criticism, especially regarding her stance during the Winter Storm Uri in 2021. Critics pointed out that the commission under her leadership didn't adequately enforce winterization for natural gas facilities, which was a major factor in power outages during that time, the famous Snowmageddon, as I believe we all know it, Novanka.
I remember that.
Environmental groups have also raised concerns about the Railroad Commission's limited action on issues like methane emissions and groundwater safety.
That's right. So let's move forward to our Democratic candidate, Catherine Colbert. So Catherine Colbert is a process safety engineer from Houston. Colbert is running on a platform of accountability and safety. She argues that Texas has seen a significant environmental and safety issues due to inadequate regulation, especially in plugging abandoned wells, which can pose hazards to both local ecosystems and communities. Colbert also advocates for stricter ethics rules, particularly around financial conflicts of interest. She's called for a ban on commissioners investing in the very companies they regulate.
And absolutely, Colbert's experience in the oil and gas industry definitely gives her some insight into the safety and ethical concerns regarding the environment. She believes that if the Railroad Commission had stronger oversight, Texas could mitigate risks like gas leaks, pollution from abandoned wells. And Colbert also brings up that as the climate concerns grow, it's essential for Texas to balance energy production with environmental responsibility. And I know, Novanka, especially in this landscape in 2024, the climate crisis and climate issues are definitely at the top of some people's at the top of some people's issues when voting this year. So that might make a serious difference.
Absolutely. We'll definitely have a close look at that within these presidential races. So let's move on to our Libertarian candidate, Hawk Dunlap. Dunlap's focus is largely on decentralizing power, advocating for a smaller government role. He argues that a free market approach would encourage innovation and more effective solutions within the energy sector. Dunlap believes that the current regulatory framework can be overly restrictive and even stifles technological advancements. His stance is that companies should bear more responsibility for safety and environmental practices without as much governmental oversight.
Right, Nevenka, and Dunlap's perspective is a definitely unique one in this race. He believes that companies would have a natural incentive to prioritize safety and environmental concerns if given that flexibility to operate independently. His stance might appeal to voters who prefer more of a minimal government intervention in private industries and trust the market to ensure responsible races. That's definitely a candidate to keep in mind.
Absolutely. So lastly, we have Eddie Espinoza from the Green Party, who focuses heavily on environmental issues. He's calling for reforms to ensure the Railroad Commission prioritizes public health and environmental safety. Espinoza has been vocal about Texas needing to adapt to cleaner energy practices and reduce dependency of fossil fuels. His campaign promotes a transition to renewable energy sources to mitigate climate impacts and reduce Texas's carbon footprint.
Right, Nevenka, and I think that's something that'll definitely touch with a lot of voters as we have a lot of new residents in Texas, specifically San Antonio, moving into the north sides like Stone Oak and those areas, Bandera, areas like that. It is definitely interesting to see the range of perspectives here. Craddock is focused on maintaining industry momentum and reducing federal interference. Colbert is pushing for stronger accountability and safety, whereas Dunlap wants a freer market with less government involvement. And Espinosa is focusing on a more renewable-focused, environmentally driven approach.
Exactly. This election represents a significant choice for Texas's future. With oil and gas at the heart of Texas's economy, voters have to consider not only immediate benefits, but also long-term sustainability. Each candidate offers a distinct path, whether it's maintaining the status quo, adding oversight, reducing government influence, or shifting towards renewable energy.
Right, Megan. A lot of things to keep in mind for this election. This is just for the Railroad Commission as well. And it's worth noting that the Railroad Commission doesn't just impact Texas. Given Texas's role as a top oil and gas producer, these policies set here can have a wider effect on the national energy trends and even global environmental trends.
For sure. So Texas voters had to think about which direction they wanted the Railroad Commission to take. Will it be the status quo, stricter safety regulations, less government intervention, or a greener, renewable energy-focused path? Regardless, their vote will help steer the state's and perhaps the nation's future in energy.
Right, Nevenka. And we're going to go ahead and move into the information we provided on the Texas State Board of Education. So in District 1, the Texas State Board of Education, we have two main candidates this year, Republican Dr. Michael Travis Stevens and Democrat candidate Gustavo Reveles. Both have interesting perspectives on education, though they approach things a bit differently. Let's start with Stevens. He's a high school teacher and a licensed minister, so he definitely brings that high school experience and that classroom experience with him.
Absolutely. So Stevens' classroom background helps give him practical insights into what teachers and students face daily. He's focused on supporting traditional education values and says he wants to keep things nonpartisan, focusing on educational quality over politics. His goal seems to be building a stable, straightforward curriculum that he feels will support student achievement.
I'm sure a lot of voters, that will resonate with a lot of voters.
Especially as a student.
Absolutely, exactly. He's interested in academic basics, specifically strong foundational skills, which he believes are essential for long-term success. Stevens also talks about how enhancing transparency in education materials, aiming to keep parents more informed about what's being taught in the schools, which is definitely a big issue today in our nation. And this emphasis on transparency has definitely been a big topic in education lately, as we just said, especially in Texas.
Now on the other side, we have Gustavo Reveles, who has a different professional background as a communications director of the Cantuyo independent school district. He's focusing more on inclusive education, advocating for a curriculum that considers all students, including marginalized groups like LGBTQ+, individuals, and recent immigrants. Revelez sees this as essential for welcoming student environment.
Yeah, inclusivity is definitely a key part of Revelez's platform. He's emphasizing that schools should be a safer place for everyone, regardless of their background or identity. This ties into his focus on expanding resources for diverse student needs and addressing disparities in the education access, especially for lower income students and families, which is an issue that has been talked about for years and years and years in elections.
That's a big part of his campaign message. While Stevens is focusing more on core curriculum standards and academic basics, Revelez seems more focused on addressing the social aspect of education. He talks a lot about representation in educational materials and preparing students to thrive in diverse environments. Both are committed to student successes, but from slightly different angles.
That's absolutely right, Nevenka. Like you said, another area where they differ in their stance is on educational policy oversight. Stevens has mentioned that he'd like the state board to have a limited role, focusing on supporting local control. He feels that educators and parents in the community should have the biggest say in how schools are taught, as opposed to decisions being made higher at the state level.
Interesting. While Stevens focuses on local control, Revelez leans more towards using the state board to set standards that support equitable learning opportunities across the district. He's concerned with addressing resource disparities and providing equitable access to learning materials and technology. He argues that without state-level standards, some schools may lack the resources they need to offer a quality education.
Certainly a nuanced debate for this election. And how much should that be decided locally versus at the state level? You know, with Texas being such a diverse and widely populated state, some argue that local control allows better tailored decisions for the students and their curriculum, whereas on the other hand, supporters of a state-led approach argue that certain standards should be universal to ensure that every student has access to the same opportunities regardless of where they live.
Exactly. I think it's worth noting that education impacts everyone, students, parents, and even the broader community. The winner will potentially have a significant influence on how education evolves in District 1 and potentially beyond. This election gives voters a chance to shape the future direction of our schools.
Certainly a lot to keep in mind for that election with that district. And we're going to shift into District 3 here. So shifting into the Texas State Board of Education race for District 3, Marissa Perez-Diaz, the current board member, is running for re-election. So what can we expect for her if she retains her seat, Nevenka?
Good question, Cam. Marissa Perez-Diaz has served since 2012 and is known for advocating policies that focus on inclusion and equity in Texas schools. She's emphasized on improving resources for bilingual education and creating curricula that reflect diverse perspectives. Her experience and focus on equitable educational standards resonates with a lot of voters in District 3.
Absolutely, Nevenka. Diversity and inclusivity is definitely something that is at the forefront of all voters' campaigns, really. Absolutely. Perez-Diaz, she has a strong background in education. She holds degrees in sociology and educational policy. Her priorities often highlight issues like revising educational materials to ensure that they accurately represent diverse histories and contributions in the state curriculum.
Yes, and with her focus on these areas, she's also addressed the importance of teacher support and retention. There's an ongoing concern about teacher shortages and the burnout rate among educators, which she argues need more attention both in terms of resources and policies at the state level.
Absolutely. Especially as these issues connect to the quality of education. If teachers are burnt out, they're not going to be able to give the proper education to the students, and the students are the future.
Exactly.
So she's also been vocal about the need to maintain transparency in board decisions, particularly with public input on curriculum changes. Since the board directly impacts what and how students learn, she believes in making the decision-making process accessible to families.
Right. And Perez-Diaz, it seems like we have a local update, so we are going to send it over to our reporter, Jonathan Pena. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Navenka. Now we just have our polls. Now polls have just closed in Texas at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, as well as Bexar County polls as closed as well here in San Antonio, Texas. For our candidates here in Bexar County, we have Bexar County Sheriff candidates Javier Salazar, incumbent Javier Salazar, Democrat; Nathan Buchanan, Republican, challenger; Bexar County Commissioner Precinct 1, incumbent Rebecca Clay Flores, Democrat; Lena Prado, Republican, challenger, Republican; Bexar County Commissioner Precinct 1, incumbent Grant Moody, Republican, challenger Susan Corbell, Democrat, for Precinct 3. Bexar County Constable Precinct 2 candidates are Leticia Rodriguez Vasquez, incumbent, Democrat, and Paul Alexander Canales, Republican, challenger. For Bexar County number 10 director, we have candidates Anne Marie Amicar, Fernando Richards Jr., Eddie R. Guerrero. And then for presidential candidates as well, we have President Donald J. Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris, Democrats. And as well as for U.S. Senate Bexar County, here in Texas, we have incumbent Ted Cruz, Republican, Colin Allred, Democrat, and Libertarian Ted Brown. Races for sheriff 2 seats on the Bexar County Commissioners Court and Constable will be decided by the Bexar County voters. Democrat Javier Salazar is seeking a 3rd term in the Bexar County Sheriff. Salazar is being challenged by Republican Nathan Buchanan. On the Bexar County Commissioners Court, Democrat Rebecca Clay Flores is seeking her 2nd term in office to represent Precinct 1. She is challenged by Republican Lena Prado. The race for Precinct 3 is a rematch for 2022, when Republican Grant Moody, incumbent, defeated Democrat Susan Corbell. Leticia Rodriguez Vasquez, a Democrat, is seeking another term as Precinct 2 constable. She is being challenged by Republican Paul Alexander Canales. We have more updates as well around the nation as well. We have polls closing in Florida at 7 p.m. as well, and polls closing in, we're going to break back. And we have polls closing as well in, sorry, let me get it up for you right now. In Oklahoma, Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Missouri, Tennessee, Florida, and for the red states. For the blue states, that closes at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have Massachusetts, Maryland, and Connecticut. We'll go right back to Navenka Gomez and Cameron Caldwell. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jonathan Pena, for that update. As polls close in San Antonio in the Texas Senate race, it is currently very tight between Senator Ted Cruz and Colin Allred.
All right, Navenka, and let's get back to
Let's get back to it. So we were discussing the State Board of Education candidates. We were currently talking about Marissa Perez-Diaz and her using public feedback to shape policy. This reflects her interest in engaging with parents and students to create a more inclusive and accurate educational experience.
That's right, Navenka, and as a voter, if you are a parent, that's definitely something you'd want to keep in mind, being a little bit more involved in your child's education and decision-making and what goes into what it is that they're learning. So another interesting aspect is her stance on the growing role of technology in education. She advocates for policies that make digital resources accessible to all students, which is especially crucial in a state as large and as varied as Texas. It's part of her broader agenda to ensure that educational opportunities are equitable regardless of a student's location or socioeconomic background.
That's true. And the accessibility of technology is a key issue. In today's digital age, not having proper access can put a student at a significant disadvantage. Perez-Diaz's approach to this issue aims to bridge that digital divide, especially in rural and underserved areas.
It's definitely a factor that a lot of people will be thinking about when going into voting, the digital divide, whether it's rural or underserved areas. Overall, Perez-Diaz focuses on inclusivity, teacher support, and resource equity, which appeals to many voters in District 3. This election will determine if she continues to advance these priorities on the board.
Absolutely. And with education being a fundamental part of Texas's future, this race highlights some pivotal concerns and priorities that will shape the curriculum and resources available to students for years to come.
Absolutely, Nevenka. Now, let's shift into the race for Texas House District 118.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the Texas House District 118 and the 2024 race between John Lujan and Christian Carranza. Both candidates have distinct platforms, so there's a lot for voters to consider. John Lujan, the Republican incumbent, is well known for his background as a firefighter and community-focused law enforcement supporter. He's been vocal about the fentanyl crisis, calling it a top priority, and has proposed measures to combat it through enhanced law enforcement resources.
Absolutely, Nevenka, and fentanyl is definitely something that has been at the top of many voters' concerns throughout these last 3.5, 8 years, or whatever it is. You know, it's fentanyl is especially on the rise with fentanyl deaths. And it's interesting to see how framing border security in the context of public safety rather than just a national security issue. Lujan agrees that a tighter border will help prevent drugs from coming into the country, particularly fentanyl from entering communities. He is also aligning with border Republican efforts for property tax relief. His platform emphasizes reducing the tax burden on residents to keep the cost of living lower.
Yes, Lujan sees economic relief as central to keeping families in the district. Additionally, his support for public education is closely tied to school security. Lujan has been vocal about increasing funding for school security and ensuring schools have resources to handle potential threats. He's framed this approach as necessary to make families feel safe sending their kids to school.
Once again, another very, very big issue that many voters are worried about this upcoming election. We've had a number of school shootings these past years, and I'm sure that's something that is going to be at the top of voters with children specifically minds of, can I send my kids to school safely?
Absolutely.
And meanwhile, Christian Carranza, the Democratic challenger, has a somewhat different approach to community welfare. Her background in social issues has really shines through in her focus on increasing funding specifically for education, for better education quality and support for teachers. Carranza argues that public schools need better resources, not only for security, but also to improve the overall learning conditions and outcomes. She wants to raise teachers' salaries and increase classroom funding to address shortages and ensure teachers have what they need.
Yes, Carranza definitely brings healthcare to that forefront, which I think is a big issue in District 118. She's particularly interested in expanding access to women's healthcare and emphasizes affordable options for all residents. Her stance on healthcare goes beyond just funding. She's looking at making healthcare more accessible and affordable, which aligns with her commitment to supporting families and lower-income communities.
That's absolutely right, Nevenka. Carranza's healthcare plan includes preventative care, especially regarding maternal and reproductive health, which has been at the forefront of this election season.
Absolutely.
And her approach to gun violence is preventative too. She's advocating for policies that address gun safety, which she sees as part of a public health and community safety. Carranza argues that gun safety laws can be both protective of the rights and focused on reducing violence.
Right, so both candidates care about safety, but their approaches differ. Lujan focusing on law enforcement and security measures, while Carranza aims to prevent violence through policy and public health initiatives. Also, Carranza's platform includes reforming Texas's energy grid, a huge issue since yet again the 2021 winter storm. She's pushing for legislation to stabilize the grid, which she views as essential to avoid future blackouts and improve energy reliability, especially for vulnerable populations.
You have to really think of Nevenka, that's with the 2021 blackout that happened, the energy crisis, that is definitely going to be at the forefront of many people's minds when going to the polls this election season, as many people went without power during that snowmageddon.
I mean, the whole state was affected.
Yeah, absolutely. The
Yes.
energy crisis that happened. And like we said, energy reform is a critical issue for Texas, especially for those in rural or low-income communities that were hit hardest during those grid failures. Carranza is positioning her energy reform stance as a way to protect Texas from future crises. In contrast, Lujan hasn't emphasized the grid as much. Instead, he's rather focusing on immediate economic relief, such as property tax cuts, and maintaining conservative fiscal policies to boost local businesses and retain jobs.
And it seems like we have an update. So for electoral votes. President Trump is at 59. Vice President Kamala Harris is currently at 35, with President Trump winning Florida, according to our sources.
And now bringing it back locally, back to San Antonio, Nevenka.
Absolutely. So we just were discussing the winter storm and the energy grid crisis. So let's talk about Lujan's tax relief platform about making Texas more affordable for working families, which he sees as a pressing concern than long-term infrastructure projects. So when it comes to the big picture, voters in District 118 really have two clear choices. Lujan's priorities are law enforcement, security, and conservative economic policies, while Carranza is advocating for social services, healthcare, education reform, and energy stability.
Right. It's definitely going to be a close race because each candidate represents very different visions for the district's future. It's definitely going to be fascinating to see which priorities resonate the most with the residents of District 118.
Oh, yes. So let's move on to another state race. Let's move on to the Bexar County Commissioner's Court, where we have Democrat Rebecca Clay Flores seeking her second term in office to represent Precinct 1. She is being challenged by Republican Lena Prado. Flores says her focus will continue to be on the needs of her constituents. Those needs include mental health services, economic development, and support for schools in Precinct 1.
Right, and Republican challenger Lena Prado is a former aircraft mechanic and current supply chain senior manager at Boeing. Prado has emphasized the importance of providing adequate resources and training for law enforcement to ensure community safety. And Prado also advocates for improving infrastructure like road safety and efficiency, which is a major issue for drivers, commuters like you and I, Nevenka, who take I-35 every single day coming to campus.
Every day without fail.
Absolutely. As well as aiming to promote equitable job opportunities and improve transportation access to support economic development in underserved areas.
That's right. So let's move on to our races for sheriff. We have two seats.
We have two candidates running for the sheriff position here. Democratic Sheriff Javier Salazar is seeking his third term as Bexar County Sheriff, and he's currently being challenged by Republican candidate Nathan Buchanan.
Sheriff Javier Salazar will be relying on his longtime career in San Antonio Police Department in his 2 terms as Bexar County Sheriff. In 2020, Salazar became the first sheriff re-elected in Bexar County since 2004. He'll be looking to repeat this year.
Republican candidate Nathan Buchanan. He will be relying on his longtime career in business and his 4 years served in various law enforcement agencies to go up against and challenge the former winner, Javier Salazar. And touching a little bit on the former race for sheriff, the race for Bexar County Sheriff has been closely watched over the years. According to our sources, Sheriff Javier Salazar won the 2020 election by a large margin against challenger Republican Gerard Rickoff. Salazar took home 62% of the total votes in the 2020 election campaign. We literally gonna do everything. No, we're good. That's it. I'm dying. Okay. Do we hop off? Okay, all right, cool. Holy shit.
Hot mic. Excellent job from our reporters to be bringing you all that information. I know it was a lot when it comes down to our precincts here in San Antonio, but they're right. Some very key races, very informative races that we have going on at this moment. Right now, as you can tell, we have updated our map. Things are going smoothly so far. We've been observing nothing coming major or any breaking news as far as any discrepancies or voters coming on through. Currently, at this moment, according to our sources, President Donald Trump and the Electoral College, like we said earlier, magic numbers 270. President Donald Trump right now is at 95, with Vice President Kamala Harris with 35. Currently, at this time, Texas is counting its votes. Closed already, as you can see in our red map. Florida, major state, has gone to President Donald Trump, as well as Alabama, Mississippi, South Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Indiana at this time. Being counted with 39% of the vote is Ohio as well. That poll has not closed, but that is currently going underway. A very key race that is happening currently right now is Georgia. Georgia is a good toss-up. From our sources, 55% of those votes in Georgia are going the way of President Donald Trump, 44.4% to Vice President Harris. Now, Texas is another state that's being strongly contested. It is currently going through its polling results with 38% reporting in Texas. It is 51%, 51.3 to President Donald Trump, with 47.4% going to Vice President Harris. Those evenly up to right now, when it comes down to vote count, it is about 2,504,952 votes for President Donald Trump and 2,310,502 votes for Vice President Kamala Harris. Again, and we have what I'm getting update right here from our president's results. It seems like President Donald Trump has now jumped up to 101 electoral votes early, with West Virginia, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Oklahoma going so far as a 63.1%. According to these sources, President Donald Trump has won Oklahoma with 7 electoral votes currently at 63.1% votes count, with 19% reporting, but with the vote already at 63.1. Florida was very interesting. That's a 56% win for President Donald Trump. 5,785,797 votes for President Donald Trump. That has been called for President Donald Trump, with 90% of their votes already being counted. So it is actually quickly moving here. Right now, the magic number 270, it is 101 electoral votes for President Donald Trump, 49 to Vice President Harris, who at this time, Kansas, as we reach the 7:30 hour, and we're monitoring here, Kansas is another state that has closed, has begun their reporting. 7% of those reports have a quick lead on Vice President Kamala Harris. Illinois, a state that has just begun its count of ballot count, has just begun. 7% right now is reporting for Vice President Kamala Harris, 58.1% to President Donald Trump's 40.8%. Illinois is going to be a very interesting state. As many know, the biggest city, one of the largest cities in the United States of America, Chicago, is a very big represents Illinois very well. However, the majority, a lot of the rest of Illinois tends to go Republican. Those have always been states. That's one state. It's always been rural versus city. Now, beginning to make the counts right now, it is a very key state right now. It is Michigan, a state where President Donald Trump has heavily been campaigning in the state of Michigan. So far, 5% of those votes have already been coming in, with a good advantage to Vice President Kamala Harris, 57.4 to 40.7. North Dakota has begun its counting as well. So far, with just 1% right off the bat in North Dakota, 68.6% of those votes that have already been counted have gone to to President Donald Trump, and Vice President Kamala Harris at 29.2. Pennsylvania, the big state with 19 electoral college votes, has begun its endeavor of counts. I know throughout all our sources as Pennsylvania might be that one, or could be that one deciding state in this presidential race. So far, with 8% right off the bat, 71.1% to 28% of Donald Trump. That is Pennsylvania, very, very, very early. 8% of those votes in Pennsylvania right now going for in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris. Now, as we start jumping into the Northeast and into the upper Northeast, as they call the New England area, New Hampshire, Vermont, Massachusetts, and Maine. One of the key states that everyone is looking into is New Hampshire, who has also began their poll counts. As of right now, reporting is 25% for Vice President Kamala Harris to 44%, a key state. So for right now, as we wrap it up and doing these transitions, some of the key states that we are looking for right now is Ohio. We are looking at that one with 41% at this moment, 50% of those votes going to President Donald Trump, we're also looking at the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, a very key race in this moment. But for right now, according to our sources, it is going to be President Donald Trump in the Electoral College vote race with 101 to Vice President Kamala Harris. We're going to be going into another break as we transition to be bringing you the second part of our second hour of broadcast here at Texas A&M San Antonio. Thank you for tuning in.
On. Am I on? It's on. I don't know if it's on mute. Does it say mute? One second. You sound good though? Okay. Sweet. Ready for intro?
Yep. Good evening, San Antonio. Good evening, San Antonio. I'm Alana Stewart, and we are bringing you live coverage here from Texas A&M San Antonio of the election.
Yes, and I am Jonathan Pena with the Mesquite as well. We are here talking over about the propositions, what we have.
Yeah, so if you voted, and we hope you did, you may have noticed that we had 6 propositions on our ballots. These are a bunch of different, a variety of things that you would have already voted on since Texas is closed. And so we have Proposition A through F. So yeah, that could bring some big changes to San Antonio.
Yes, San Antonio voters had the decision to vote for or against half a dozen of proposed changes to the San Antonio Charter amendments. Voters will be asked whether they would Voters will be asked whether to pay their city council members more, extend their terms, and repeal the voter-approved caps on city manager salary and tenure.
Yeah, so we know that you've already voted, or maybe you didn't, but if you did and you weren't quite sure what you were voting on, we decided that we could go ahead and give you some insight on that. So to start with Proposition A, this one was relatively simple with just the changing of the term conflict of interest. We actually don't have a definition of conflict of interest right now in our city charter. And so we voted to go ahead and add in a definition. And this also will allow the Ethics Review Board to hire a lawyer outside of their area to kind of resolve those conflict of interest issues. And so, yeah, that will include sufficient funding for that board to obviously pay for that lawyer.
Yeah. And with Proposition B, there are going to be language updates with the proposition. Updates that are outdated and superseded languages, but it's not meant to make any substantive change. Revisions of archaic languages in the city charter to new language terms, as well as remove old statutes that have been long superseded by state law. The ballot language shall not follow sections of the city charter by being amended to revise or eliminate provisions which have been superseded by the state law, and to update the current usage from 1 to 136 and to Article 7 and Article 8, my bad, excuse me, Article 8.
Yeah, I know that I'll really appreciate some updated language. Some of
Yes.
the words in that city charter are just too hard to read.
Yeah,
I'm like, what does that even mean? Can we get to some new language?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's Proposition A and B, and then on to Proposition C, which more of you voters may have heard about.
Yes.
The city has increased their funding for these ads, and so whether you were for or against, I know that you've seen an ad for it if you've been keeping up with the election. Proposition C currently is going to allow a change up of the term limits of the city manager, so right now, they are allowed to be there essentially as long as they wanted to. Or currently, they can only be there for 8 years. Before 2018, when we voted on this initially, they could be there as long as they wanted to, as long as everybody was still okay with them being there. And so now we're voting to try and remove that to go back to the way that we had it when you could just be there as long as they wanted. Instead of the 8-year of service rule. And then it also is going to increase their salary.
Oh, yes. And then with Proposition C, there is an against with the San Antonio Firefighters Union. The San Antonio Firefighters Union is trying to go for the limits for the city manager and have a cap on their tenure as well too, and their salary, which is interesting.
Yeah, so right now their salary is based on, it can only be up to 10 times more than the lowest paid city employee. And so that is going to be around the $37,000 mark. So they're going to be making around $370,000 a year. And so this proposition wants to go ahead and remove that cap, where the city council will be able to adjust that salary based on cost of living, things like that, and how well they're performing their job. So they're wanting to increase it to be a little bit closer to what we see in maybe Fort Worth, and in Houston, places like that, where the price of living is going to be relatively similar. We do live in the great city of San Antonio, but we all know it is not super cheap.
That's true. It is high housing as well.
It is. The housing is crazy.
Yes.
Yes.
But going on what you said, Alana, with the city manager's salary and the tenure cap, the fire union has made a stance on it since 2018. They wanted to cap it. Their stance for Proposition C was a matter of principle. They aim to foster a more equitable and progressive city administration. So the Prop C would undo the salary cap and term limits that 59% of the San Antonio voters approved 6 years ago, following a union-led charter campaign from Renew SA, which helped go for mostly all the propositions from A through F.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I went ahead and wrote down a quote from a local philanthropist and entrepreneur who serves on the chair of Renew SA, and his name is Gordon Hartman. He says, Walsh has to leave the position in 2027, even if he's done a good job. Local philanthropist Gordon Hartman doesn't think that he should be removed from the position if he's still doing a good job. He says, I have 300 employees among all my nonprofits. I keep all the good ones. I don't want the bad.
And very interesting, because we also got some more info from J.D. Salinas, which was another contributor from Renew SA as well too. J.D. Salinas said in his Q&A with Mitski, we have that San Antonio is a unique it's a unique city in its own way, where there is a professional role where many people see it as like a business city.
Absolutely.
And people in the business city want higher pay. Absolutely. And with a significant higher pay, there must be somebody in power, just like Eric Walsh is as an incumbent. They want him to stay and keep the same mentality for their employee, the San Antonio City employees as well too.
Yeah, San Antonio needs to be operated as a business, as all cities do. We obviously are bringing in money, and the city manager is the one who's going to be distributing those funds, kind of deciding on the budget annually, and organizing the events that we have, maybe at the Riverwalk. Like when we light up the Riverwalk for Christmas, he plays a big part in that. So basically, he's like the CEO of
Yes,
San
of San
Antonio.
Antonio. Yep.
To move on from Proposition C, Proposition D is going to allow city employees to participate in politics as long as they're not in uniform or on the job, other parameters like that. Obviously, there's going to be some rules and regulations, but this one would allow them to participate, endorse candidates, go out on the campaign trail with those candidates, especially locally.
Yeah, San Antonio, it is a major political city.
It is.
So where there's many employees are restricted to, because of the corporate jobs, and many have restrictions to and going into civic engagements and political endorsements as well too, and political activities. So ensuring a fair working environment and preventing punishment for employees is a big thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that kind of plays into what a lot of people are talking about. Is it constitutional to tell people that they can't represent what they believe in politically? Is it not? So they're kind of going both ways on this. And so we'll see how the voter turns out that way, because it's definitely going to be pretty split 50-50.
Yes.
And then continuing, we have Proposition E. And so going back to Proposition C, this is another scenario of raising salaries and changing up kind of the terms. And so Proposition E is going to be for a raise of the salaries for city council and the mayor annually.
Yeah, so if this amendment is passed, it will adjust city council members' wages to align with the median income for a 4-person household, as determined by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development (HUD). If approved, it is set to set the city council members' wages at $70,000 and the mayor's at $87,000. The proposition would be in effect if the rise in pay for average household increases, and the pay for the city council would balance out the pay increase for average households. That is very interesting.
That is super interesting. Definitely, as the cost of living is going up, those wages do need to be adjusted. And so they just kind of have to decide whether or not that price of living has justified a raise in the salary, and I guess that's up to us as voters to kind of decide that. And then Proposition F will go along with Proposition E and C, talking about changing terms. So this one's a little bit nuanced, I think. So this is going to be changing the length of the terms in the mayor and city council positions. So they're still going to be up to 8 years consecutively. Except for right now, we have them set up in 2-year terms.
Yes.
So every 2 years, we are voting for a new mayor and new city council. What they're wanting to change it to is changing it to the 4-year term limits, still 8 consecutive years, so no big difference, just how often we have to vote for them.
Yes. So yeah, like you said, to 8 years. This will result to a full term, 2 terms, full 2
Right.
terms, shifting. Yeah, it's a shift in establishment and power. But we can see how long our officials have stepped their power to regulate for the city.
Right, yeah, no, it's very similar to how we're doing the presidential elections. How much can you really change in 2 years? Not a whole lot. Not when you're trying to keep up with the busyness of life and everything else, and changing policies does take quite a bit of time. Obviously, voters have to vote on it. A lot of things go to us as voters, and then if we don't get the vote specifically, our representatives do, and that takes a great bit of time.
Yes.
So it's kind of just deciding on changing that shift of power back and forth every 2 years, or are we going to do every 4 years? And that will be up to you as the voters.
Yeah, from J.D. Salinas from Renew SA, he said the reason it's approving for Proposition F is to provide stability in leadership. And it allows for the official more time to implement their ideas and complete long-term projects and policies without frequent turnover.
All right, it looks like we have a local election update with our reporter Alyssa after this break.
Good evening. Thank you, team. My name is Alyssa Casada, and this evening, with those San Antonio polls closing, I've got some great updates for you. For Bexar County Sheriff, I've got incumbent Javier Salazar and challenger Nathan Buchanan. I've got 58% and 42% votes, respectively. Going on, I've got Bexar County Commissioner Precinct 1. I've got Rebecca Clay Flores, incumbent, with challenger Lena Prado. Again, those votes are 59% to 41%, respectively. For Bexar County Commissioner Precinct 3, I've got Grant Moody, incumbent, against challenger Susan Corbell. Those percentages are 55% and 45%, respectively. Finally, I've got Bexar County Constable Precinct 2 with Paul Alexander Canales and Leticia Rodriguez Vasquez, incumbent, 55% to 45%. Thanks, KSAT, for those numbers. As you can see there, it's a close race, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Back to you, Desk.
Thank you, Alyssa. Now we're going to come back to the propositions. Now we have live updates from our SA charter amendments with Proposition A. Can we go into Proposition A with the live coverage right now? Sorry. Looks like Proposition A candidates, candidate for and against. Proposition A for the Ethics Review Board. There's 237,299 votes for, which 72% is for, and against is 28%, which is 93,818 votes. That is for charter for
It looks
Proposition
like
A.
everyone wants a definition
Yeah.
of conflict of interest. Just so that we're super specific about those terms, there's no black and white. There's no gray area in there, so we've got some black and white terms to follow up with. That also is going to increase funding for the board so that they're able to hire outside lawyers to manage those conflicts of interest.
Sweet. And then we could go into Proposition B with the San Antonio Charter Amendment, Proposition B, language modernization. For, we have 68% in the Bexar County, and against, we have 32% in Bexar County against. Language modernization, so this will go with the revision of archaic language in the city charter to new language terms, as well as remove old statutes that have been long superseded by the state law. And yes, we do need, and everybody saying for, we do need some clarification.
Everyone wants some simpler language, and obviously sometimes those city charters can get pretty long when you've got some laws.
And with, yes, so for is 68% and against is 32%. So yes, everybody wants clarification. Everybody wants clarification on what proposition are, what propositions and old statutes and laws were, superseded by the state laws. They want more clarification on what's going to be implemented for the state.
Right. Those city charters do get long when you're adding new propositions and laws to them all the time. And so removing some of those old statutes will free up some space, and it looks like everybody's for that.
Yeah. With Proposition C, city manager, tenure and pay. This one's a big one for San Antonio, and it is a real close one. It looks like
it's looking super close.
So for, we have 54%, and against there's 46%. And it's a real close margin. For the for, there's 182,000, and then against 157,000. So 30,000 differential for Proposition C.
Awesome. So it's looking like that's going to be a pretty close vote back and forth. I wonder if we'll be seeing this proposition on a ballot in another 6 years.
Yep, it looks like it. I mean, because it's a real big one to see with the city manager on tenure and the tenure and the pay as well too. They want to go with, like you said, Fort Worth and Houston's same salary.
Try and keep those a little bit closer is what I think they're proposing and their goal in that proposition. What else we got?
Now, we have San Antonio Charter Amendment, Proposition D, city employee political activity. So for for, we have 62%, and against, we have 38%. And it looks like for is taking the lead on this one.
Yeah, it's definitely not as close of a race as that Proposition C is. And so it's looking like the voters right now are for the practicing for the city employees of putting out their political views and being able to get involved in those local politics.
Yeah. And going on to Proposition E, city council pay. City council pay for is 64% and against is 36%. So with Proposition E, there is raises salaries of the city council and mayor annually. So like I said before, this will raise the pay for the mayor to $87,000 and the city council members' wages at $70,000. That is a big upvote for. People want to see their city councils be paid as other city council people in Austin and in Dallas-Fort Worth area too, as well too.
Yeah, it's looking like for the most part everybody's in favor of raising all the wages from Proposition C and E, and then I'm sure we'll see on F a similar result.
Similar
because
result.
they all seem to be very similar propositions, just for different positions, and kind of different language. So it's going to be used a little bit different in each individual area. So we'll have the changing of the terms, which it's looking like everybody is for.
Yes.
Yeah.
High margin in for. I mean, really close margin in for, actually.
Yeah.
For and against for Proposition F for city council terms. We have
This one's looking a lot more like Proposition C in terms of closeness.
yes, 53% for and then 47% against. It's really close. And for it changes the 2-year terms to up to 8 years to a 4-year, wait a minute, sorry. Changes the 2-year terms to 4 years, and then the 4-year term to a full term for both 10 years, for a tenure of 8 terms for a long term.
Yeah, kind of decreasing that shift in power, and it looks like our voters are really enjoying that, at least so far.
Yep.
So if you voted, you probably grabbed an I voted sticker, because who doesn't want a badge? I don't think I ever grew out of my 5th grade kindergarten, I want a sticker face.
Yes, I wanted the stickers for the I voted since 2008.
Yeah, I remember going with my parents to the polls and getting the future voter stickers, and always asking my grandparents if I could borrow their sticker and wear it after them. And then of course in grade school you're getting stickers on your papers and your teachers are handing them out. And due to that excitement, it became super popular within the voting. And so voters all across the country, nationally, are wearing their I voted stickers.
Yes, and it's proud to see that everybody's doing their civic duty, voting. And
Yeah, well, and who doesn't want a good selfie moment,
That's
right?
true.
I mean, if you're not taking a picture of your I voted sticker, did you even really vote?
So going into history with that, since the voting mobilization effort from 1972 and with the 26th Amendment, granted 18-year-old American citizens the right to vote, appeasing the demands of activists who criticized the government this was during the Vietnam War.
Yeah. And so as early as the 1950s, we started seeing them more nationalized. And it was in more of the effort to get people to get out and vote, especially during that World War II era. Everybody was out protesting, but nobody was really out voting to change these policies and get new politicians in, and kind of in the things that they were protesting. And so I think her name was Janet. She came up with the design that we see today, with the waving flags and the I voted across it. And so around that time when she did that, she was doing it to kind of draw voters in.
Yeah, Janet Bordeaux, like you said.
Yes.
She's was a supply vendor of independent tabulations, former president, in acknowledgement of the lack of public awareness of Election Day. Bordeaux had a design that was copyrighted by the late 1988 for the stickers that were available in all 50 states, which is awesome to see. And now everybody's wearing the stickers after they voted. And
Yeah, it's like a tradition at this point. Yeah.
Big tradition. And
It's super awesome.
It is.
Yeah, and then a lot of small businesses, I've seen some in San Antonio, as well as across the nation, give out these little incentives if you bring your I voted sticker in. So you may get a discount on your soda or some kind of cookie, something.
You know what, Alana? I did see for Nietzsche's down the street on Roosevelt, they were giving a free carne guisada taco.
Oh my gosh, I should have brought mine.
Yes.
Dang, I'll remember that for 4 years from now.
4 years from now.
Yeah, and so you kind of have this like adult Chuck E. Cheese kind of like feeling
Yeah.
of it's super nostalgic to just like take your sticker around everywhere and it's like you're inserting your tickets and getting those little discounts.
Yeah.
So it's super fun.
Yeah, really great. And it also, another one was Shake Shack. You get free fries with the purchase of a drink as well, too.
Oh my gosh, that's so fun. Yeah. Yeah, so I know that I had my I voted sticker this year, but I also noticed that there were some different I voted stickers this
There
year.
is.
We had some this Jaguar voted stickers, and so if you voted here on campus, you may have gotten one of those stickers, as well as a sticker that specifies that you voted in the presidential election.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's super exciting too.
With the presidential election, I think it was the American eagle holding the shield of the American flag.
Yeah, so I had 3 different stickers to give out this year.
Awesome, that's so cool.
So exciting, yes. All right, and then it looks like earlier this afternoon, we may have seen that some doors on ballot tabulators had not been properly secured. So what do you think that that could mean?
Well, that's very great. That's a very good question, because if the tabulators, I'm going to go back on that too. They said there's no signs of tampering. So if there was no signs of tampering, then to tabulate 31,000 ballots that were sent through, that means there's pretty good integrity of that ballots went through.
Yeah, but I'm sure it's going to lead to a lot of questioning.
That is true.
Which we've seen these things nationally of some tampering with ballot things. And just to reassure all of our San Antonio voters, all of these ballots that were cast into these tabulators are going to be manually tabulated,
Yes.
As well as across the nation where they've been having these issues. And so no worries about election integrity there. And so we can all know that we cast our vote and that it's being counted, and that's super important this election year.
With a large population in San Antonio as well too, and it's very scary, not scary, but like iffy to see if what's going on with our ballots, if they're going to go through or if they're not going to go through.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we had a lot of people out early voting this year. There's
my
a
gosh.
huge call to early vote. But it looks like we have an update. So we're going to go ahead and send it over to Darius for that update.
Well, thank y'all guys. Right now we have an update for the elections. Illinois, New Hampshire, and Virginia have been called for Harris. And we have another update for the Texas Railroad Commission general election. Right now, Christy Craddock is in the lead with 1,786,366 votes, with 59.9% of the percentage of the votes and 25% of estimated reporting. In second place, we have Catherine Colbert with 1,075,832,000 votes and 36.1% of the votes. We have Hawk Dunlap with 2.3% of the votes, and then we have Eddie Espinoza with 1.7%.
Now we're going to thank you, Darius. Now we're going to take it back to the San Antonio Charter Amendments. San Antonio Charter Amendment Proposition A, which was the Ethics Review Board, and it looks like there's a big margin now for the for, which was now is 72%, and against is 28%. Looks like for is going to be looks like for is going to pass. It's going to pass for Proposition A.
Yeah, that proposition is definitely, that margin between the for and against is definitely getting bigger. I'll be interested to see how we end off the night on that one.
Yes.
But it is just a definition of conflict of interest.
Yeah.
And so it's not super controversial. It's not super surprising to see something like this.
Next down, we have San Antonio Charter Amendment Proposition B, language modernization. For is 68% and against is 32%, which with another high margin for for, with going into this might close out for for again too. This will be the revision of archaic language in city charter and to new language terms, as well as to remove old statutes that have been long superseded by the state law. So yeah, big upside for for.
Yeah, that margin is definitely also growing. The margin between them is definitely getting larger. A lot of people are voting more for, and so I guess some of the feedback we could be getting from voters on not changing the language would be like fear of it being misinterpreted if you change the language. But then the people who are for it obviously are looking for more common terms, clear definitions, easy to understand.
Yes. And then here's the big one. We have San Antonio Charter Amendment, Proposition C, City Manager tenure and pay. It still looks like a close margin still, with going again with for 54% and against 46%. Numbers are still looking similar, slight changes, but still 30,000 differential.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think that this one is closer than when we saw it last. It's getting a little bit closer. We still do have about a 30,000 range between, but I am super interested to see how that one goes because it's obviously a very close debate between for and against.
Yes, and with the San Antonio Charter Amendment, Proposition D, city employee political activity, and it looks like this one looks like it's going to go for 62% is for, and against is 38%. Another high margin one for Proposition D.
Yep, those have increased greatly. So it looks like we may be seeing some city employee political activity soon.
Yes, ma'am. And then San Antonio Charter Amendment, Proposition E, city council pay. This one is another big margin with Proposition C, but this one looks like it's going for more than Proposition C was. 64% for 36% against. So people want to see the city council being paid and the mayor being paid as well as their 87,000 for the mayor and then 72,000 for the city council.
Yeah. I don't know that very many voters are going to be against raising the wages of those city officials. Obviously, we do have some who are against it. But I should read up more on the people who are for and against it because I haven't seen any actual testimony on this, which led me to believe it wasn't super controversial. So I kind of figured those numbers would be a little bit closer. Further apart than they are. So that's super interesting.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
And lastly, but not least, was San Antonio Charter Amendment Proposition F with the city council terms. This will lead the terms from 2 years to 4 years, and then a 4-year term to a 8-year term for a long tenure. For for, it looks like there's 53. It's another close one with Proposition C as well. It's 53% going for, and against is 47%. Another tight margin for Proposition F.
Yeah, that's super close. But like we said earlier, it isn't a huge change. It is still 8 years total that you're able to serve on the city council or as mayor. And so the only difference is going to be how those terms are set up, where we right now have elections every 2 years for those positions. We would have them every 4 years, similar to the presidential election. And so they kind of propose this in order to kind of delay that transition of power so often, because it's obviously pretty hard to do things in 2 years, much less 4, or 4 years, much less 2. And so to kind of keep that transfer of power from going back and forth so often, that is why it was proposed. And shockingly, that is a very close back and forth poll.
Yes.
Yeah.
So with Proposition F, this will create 4-year terms, beginning with the May of 2025 election. Council members would be still limited to 8 years in office, but 5 It looks like there are 5 current council members, including some who plan to run for mayor, who could be forced out of their midterm in the future to avoid going past the 8-year term limit. Their terms will be filled by the winners of special elections, and council members currently serving their 2-year terms are limited to 8 years in office. The 10 council members and mayor are elected concurrently. So yeah, it looks like we're still looking at the ballots. I mean, the ballots, yes, the proposition ballots as we go on for the night. And it looks like there's no update right now for them as we refresh it. But
yeah. Speaking of numbers, we've got some updates on obviously how many numbers of votes they've counted. And so it's looking like right now, fewer Bexar County voters in this presidential election than 4 years ago,
wow.
which is super interesting. So this year's total turnout so far, at least in what has been counted, or what they're estimating, has fell short 756,000 votes compared to 2020. Unofficial county tallies show that 58% of the county's nearly 1.3 million registered voters cast ballots in the November 5th general election. Early voters made up the majority of that, with 577,000 in-person votes and 32,000 absentee votes recorded. Around 146,500 people checked in to go vote on Election Day as of 7 p.m. Tuesday, according to county officials.
Wow.
Yeah, so our turnout is significantly lower, one, to 2020, but also in comparison to those registered voters.
Yeah.
So maybe the storm's keeping them in.
Yeah. Compared to our early voters, which made up most of our majority, which is pretty amazing to see that a lot of San Antonians went early to vote, as early as possible since October.
Yeah.
Which is phenomenal.
I did myself notice, and I'm not sure if you noticed, I didn't see the lines quite as long as I remember them being in 2020. Obviously, I wasn't able to vote in 2020 as we're in college. Most of us have not voted until this election.
Yes.
However, I did go with people to vote. I went with my parents. And then also, I did get to vote in the 2022 midterms, and the lines were insane.
Yes.
And when I went to vote this year, I found that the lines were a lot shorter. Maybe that's because I voted here on campus, and so there was less people here on campus. But even at other polling sites, I saw lines significantly shorter than 2020.
Yes, I would say the same here too. Mission Library had the same amount of people from last 2020 election. And when I went to my local community center, there was not that many people in line as well either. I would say like at least 20 to like 40, but I thought it was gonna be at least like 50 to like 200 at least for early voting.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I did vote on the second day of early voting, and so I guess I'm not sure where most people turn out on early voting, but I did go the second day. I got back into town on a Tuesday, which was the second day of early voting, and I walked right up, gave them my ID, and they handed me my ballot, walked up to the tabulator, entered my ballot, and that was the end of it. It took me 10 minutes max, where in the past I've stood in line for 30 to 45 minutes. Super interesting to see less San Antonio voters turning out for this election. I'm really curious why that is.
Yeah, I would say that, like same for me too. I was only 5 minutes in line to go to the tabulator to do my ballot. It was pretty interesting. Let's go into. I'm not seeing any other updates for propositions at all either. Is there?
It looks like we're going to have an update on those national polls and to Texas on those polls. So we're going to go ahead and send you to break, and we'll be back with Benji.
hot mic, and desk mic. I'm sorry? Which one, Texas or national? Testing, hot mic. Testing. Excellent job from our reporter. Very proud of their work going into the second hour. We are now starting to start hour number 8 o'clock this evening Central Time here in Texas, meaning some polls have already closed. This is the major hour that a lot of folks, that a lot of the nation is going to be looking at, because this is where the majority of the polls start reporting, and we're going to have some major updates coming here. Nobody's called much of the states, but what we're going to do, give you a update when it comes down to the state, what's moving on in the state, as well as what's going on in the national stage. So far, from what we have reported, some states that are closing here are at 8 o'clock. It's going to be ourselves here in Texas, who's already starting to tabulate, bring in some moments, so start tabulating some reporting. Louisiana is going to be bringing in some more numbers, as well as Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. This is going to get tight, and it's going to get really close here in a little bit. These are some very key states that everybody's looking at when it comes down to the national eye of tonight. I want to congratulate right now all of our reporters that have come earlier through today, this evening. They have done an excellent job getting you a lot of the information here in San Antonio, Texas, as a lot of these reports that are coming in through right now. We do have some results coming in, some poll results in San Antonio when it comes down to some of these key races in Bexar County. One of the major races that everybody's keeping an eye on is what's going on in that Bexar County sheriff race when it comes down to it. The incumbent there, the Democrat Javier Salazar, as well as the Republican challenger Nathan Buchanan. That's one race that everybody's going to be looking at. There's three major precincts currently right now that is being battled, that's being contested. As we spoke about earlier, precinct number 3 with the Republican Grant Moody, the incumbent, and challenger Susan Corbell, that are going to be going out in precinct number 3, as well as precinct number 1. Rebecca K. Flood is a Democrat incumbent, and she's going against Lina Prado, the challenger in precinct 1. And in precinct 2, Leticia Rodriguez Vasquez with the incumbent going against Paul Alexander Canales. Those are some major movements here in Bexar County that we are looking for. And when it comes down to the Texas Senate race, again, we're looking at here the major one that all eyes is everybody's on is Senator Ted Cruz and Carl Allred. And as we put up our map, you're starting to see here how Texas is leaning, and as well as we can always notice with these maps. It's when it comes down to the presidential race, we're looking up at Dallas, we're looking at Fort Worth, Austin, San Antonio. But one thing that I haven't yet to see reported is the Rio Grande Valley down in South Texas, which we haven't had confirmation as to who is winning on those counties as of for right now. But for sure, as you can see how this map is winning Texas for right now, from what our sources are conducting us, are letting us know, I believe about 55 to 58% of Texas is currently being reported and leaning heavily towards Donald Trump in Texas, a key state. I know, and I want to bring it back to that because a lot of folks have if you notice, when it comes down to the major news, Texas is sometimes considered a swing state, could be possibly, but I think for this election right now, as big as the state of Texas is, from what we are reporting here, in Texas itself, we have about 56%, and it is right now currently, according to our sources, 54% to Donald Trump with 4,024,000 and 150,000 votes, and Kamala Harris with 44.8% of the vote in Texas. It's starting to open up. The cities, the major cities of Austin, San Antonio, Houston, Dallas, and as you can see, El Paso heavily going for Vice President Kamala Harris. But for right now, with about 58% of the vote, it's Texas. Now, let's switch it over to the national polls. That's how things are moving up right now. The magic number is 270. It is about 8:21 to 8:30. Normally, polls won't close or they won't call anything till maybe 10 o'clock later. But for right now, things are starting to take shape when it comes down to the electoral college and the presidential race of this country. Now, some states have already, as they normally go in past elections, have already been called for, according to our sources, for President Donald Trump. One of those states with 94% closing it out is Florida with 30 electoral votes, as well as Mississippi and Louisiana. Now, one of the top sub-states that we're looking for is Georgia, North Carolina, and Virginia. Those big states, and as well as the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Now, these major states are key states that the presidential candidates are really honing in at the moment when it comes down to it. I want to bring it back to our key races here in Texas. So, again, I'm going to start, this is according to KSAT, our sources. I'm starting to see some numbers that are coming in here, and I want to start with precinct number 3. It is, for right now, from what KSAT is reporting, it is Republican Grant Moody, the Republican incumbent commissioner of precinct number 3, with 55% of the vote against 45% of the vote of Democrat challenger Susan Corbell. Still a very, very tight race when it comes down to precinct number 3. It's going to get, as numbers have started coming in, I know for right now, when it comes down to the state representatives in District 121, another major race in San Antonio that we're looking at with 73.1%. This is according to our sources at KSAT. With 73.1% of the precincts reporting, for right now, Republican Mark LaHood is holding on to a 52% percentage of precinct reporting against Laurel Jordan Swift's, the Democrat challenger, 48%. So it is still close in District 121, but Mark LaHood hanging on in District 121 for state representative in San Antonio with that percentage. Again, with 72% reporting, according to KSAT. Another district representative race that a state representative race that we're looking at in District 118 is the one that we've been seeing a lot on the commercials with Republican John LaHood. Our former reporters were speaking about that, going against Democrat challenger Christian Carranza at 29,424 votes. At that one as well, it is 52% John LaHood against 48% of Christian Carranza. Now, this is 72% of the precinct reporting that has been going on right now. In District 28, there is a fight there between Jay Furman and Henry Cuellar. And when it comes down to that, that one's reporting at 40%. Those have already started coming in for District 28 between Henry Cuellar and Jay Furman. And for that district, we have Jay Furman right now with a 51%, 49%, 40% reporting. And one key race that everyone is looking for is going to be the one down in the Rio Grande Valley, Monica de la Cruz with Michelle Vallejo, Monica de la Cruz, the incumbent. So far, according to our sources in KSAT, with 11.6 precincts reporting. This is 34 precincts out of 294. Monica de la Cruz right now is on a big jump with 73% against Michelle Vallejo. Now, I'm going to leave it this before I jump into what our current map of the country is looking at for the United States. The last ones I want to look for right now is the U.S. Senate race. Senator Ted Cruz pulling just a little bit ahead, and this is with 57.9% reporting when it comes down to the precincts in the U.S. Senate Texas race. That is the incumbent Senator Republican Ted Cruz with 52% against Colin Allred, the challenger, at 46%. Now, again, this is 57%. As the night continues going on, we are going to keep you updated with those moving now. Here, almost 9 o'clock, we should start seeing more and more results trickling down. Let's bring it back now to the Texas race and our president race in the country. It is starting to get close currently when it comes down to these elections. When it comes down to Texas, what we have in Texas currently right now for these key races in Texas, again, like I said earlier, President Donald Trump is currently leading with 428,443 votes. This is with 58.8% of precincts reporting in Texas, 54% to 44%. President Donald Trump slowly pulling away. If you go back to the Texas map that we had earlier, there's still a lot of major counties all over Texas. It seems like for right now, the major cities have already been tabulated. Normally that's what happens in Texas. The big cities get those big numbers as precincts around rural counties, and out there, major west counties up in the east and the panhandle up of Texas, it starts kind of slowly we start reporting. But for right now, nothing has been called for, according to our sources, nothing has been called for the state of Texas as far as a presidential race. Now, I'm going to bring it back to our map. This is according to our sources. Currently, right now, across the board, we're looking at a national 52% lead, according to our sources, for President Donald Trump, and 47% currently right now for Vice President Kamala Harris. That is the national. That is what we're looking at when it comes down to that election map. Now, and I have some breaking news for you here. This is according to by Fox. This is according to our sources at Fox. 51 to 46. It has been called for Ted Cruz. So it seems like Ted Cruz, according so far up to this point, Fox 51 has called it for right now for Senator Ted Cruz, and it seems that it's going to be Senator Ted Cruz who's going to be hanging on to that very precious seat in the Texas, very tight seat when it comes down to Texas. When it comes down to that Texas Senate race, Senator Ted Cruz, according to Fox 51, 46, as well as being called for Senator Ted Cruz. And according to Fox as well, we have Texas going red. Texas has been called for President Donald Trump, and I'm seeing some of these election maps, and it has been confirmed. Texas, with 60% of the votes, has been called for Senator Ted Cruz as well as President Donald Trump. With this said, there are 40 electoral votes in Texas. However, we still have the major 10 p.m. Hour over Central Standard Time when it comes down to the West Coast. And we're talking California, and we're talking about Oregon, and we're talking about Washington. California, with some major 54 electoral votes out in California. If we look into that map, we know that it for sure has gone Democrat leaning in many of those areas, but that doesn't give we're gonna see how that's gonna end up tonight. I know for what we're seeing here in Texas, the map, when it comes down to the majority of Texas, Donald Trump wins Texas with 40 electoral votes. Now, what does this mean when it comes down to the presidential race overall? We're going to give you an update here of the electoral votes here totaling after these results that I've been seeing here. I'm going to give you right now, and as those results, according to our sources, closing right now, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, and Ohio. Right now, we are at 178 electoral votes for President Donald Trump against 99 electoral votes of Vice President Kamala Harris. We have Georgia still awaiting. They have not called it, but it's a toss-up in there. 75% of Georgia has been counted, tabulated. North Carolina, a big state that must go, that you've been seeing a lot, currently hit very hard with hurricanes. Right now, with 53% of the votes reporting so far, that's 16 electoral votes, as well as 16 electoral votes to Georgia. And in Virginia, we're looking at that one as well. That's 13 electoral votes right now leaning towards President Donald Trump. Now, the key state that I still want to look up into, that we're still looking at, and this is according to our sources, 26% reporting currently is going to be the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania, from what I've been seeing here tonight, is going to be that one state that I'm anticipating could be the deciding factor tonight. Now, we are going to do our best to try to stretch this out until the last minute. Right now, we're at 178 electoral votes to 99. Again, the magic number for tonight, it's 270. 270 gets the electoral, it's going to go to whoever, whichever president candidate hits that 270 mark. But for right now, we are looking into a 178 lead to 99. Reporting still, Minnesota just began, and right there with just 1%, it seems that right now it's starting to lead another major swing state, as well as Wisconsin and Ohio. But when it comes down to Minnesota and Wisconsin, it seems like for the moment, right now, President Donald Trump right now has a slight lead. We still got a lot more to go. I believe it's about 10% to 11% of their reporting. Virginia, North Carolina as well, still looking to go into, starting to lean a little bit more to President Donald Trump. Now, one thing that we haven't seen, and if you look at our map, is our uncolored states. That's because we are moving towards the mountain time. But the major states, as we all know, that we've all been seeing, that we're going to be keeping an eye on here very soon as we come into the 8:30 mark of our time here, we're going to be looking very heavily into Nevada, and we're going to be looking very heavily into Arizona. Major deciding factor states out in the Mountain West region. Idaho, Montana still hasn't tabulated, but we're looking to see where that is going to be leading when it comes down to the overall. But for right now, bringing it back local, I want to see where we are when it comes down to our races, our key races here in Texas. But these key races, again, with almost 60% of the votes. I haven't seen KSAT yet, we are using for sources to call anything yet for leading currently right now. District 118, I'm coming right back to it. Now we're at the 72% precinct reporting. Currently, Republican John Lujan is holding on to 52-48 lead, as well as Republican Mark LaHood on District 121. One other one that I want to look at again was Monica de la Cruz, U.S. Representative, District 15, holding on to 73%. That is already up to 20% reporting in Texas. And then Jay Furman, Republican, going up against the incumbent, Henry Cuellar, an icon when it comes down to that, District 28. Currently, right now, Jay Furman has a slight lead, 51 to 49% over Henry Cuellar with 56,000 votes versus Henry Cuellar's 53. That is 40.8% of the reporting. And then one more time, bringing it back down to our commissioner, Bexar County Commissioner precincts. We're going to begin with precinct number 1. So far, nothing has been called there, but the incumbent, Rebecca Clay Flores, is holding on there with 59%. And then a very key county commissioner for precinct 3, Republican Grant Moody, is holding on to 55% to incumbent Susan Corbell. When it comes down to, one more time, these national races, when it comes down to it, North Dakota, South Dakota, right now Wisconsin, we're looking at Wisconsin, 17%. That might be one of those states that might be going into the later hours. Right now, Michigan has begun their tallying, and it's not too much of a difference between both President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris. But when it comes down to Texas, bringing it back, Texas has been called for President Donald Trump, and when it comes down to the key Senate race, it is going to go to Senator Ted Cruz. Currently, right now, before I leave you and bring you into our last hour of our broadcast of this special election night of Texas A&M San Antonio, Texas A&M University San Antonio, we're going to leave it at just 178 electoral votes to 99 electoral votes of Vice President Kamala Harris. It's going to get tight. This is the hour that things are going to start getting pretty testy around. Again, we're looking at North Carolina, we're looking at Georgia, we're looking at Virginia, and when it comes down to these key races in San Antonio, we're looking at District 121, Mark LaHood against Democrat incumbent Laurel Jordan Swift, as well as Christian Carranza and John Lujan III, the Republican, hanging on there. When it comes down to District 118, a very important district right now that when I have here are District 28 and District 15 here in Texas, between Jay Furman and Juanito Cuellar. 51% of the votes, with 40% of the precincts reporting right now. We have 51% for Jay Furman against 49% against Henry Cuellar. But it seems that Representative Henry Cuellar is starting to gain a little bit of ground there. Now, the big one for the night, Monica de la Cruz and the Republican incumbent against the challenger, Representative Michelle Vallejo, the Democrat. Right now, that's 73% for Monica de la Cruz. And one more time, recapping it, when it comes down to the U.S. Senate race, it's going to stay to Senator Ted Cruz, and it's going to go to President Donald Trump in Texas. We're going to go for a little quick break. We're going to bring in our next reporters. They're going to be bringing you more information when it comes down to everything local, everything information in San Antonio, precincts, and a lot more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back right after this break.
I think so. Okay. Hello and welcome back. My name is Crystal Ramos. We're coming into the third hour of our live coverage of Election Night 2024 with updates for the very first time here at Texas A&M San Antonio. With a large number of polls already closed, the numbers are starting to roll in as we speak,
and we'll be bringing you up-to-the-minute information as it comes in from our sources, local news station KSAT 12. As Benji mentioned, with results for Arizona, as Benji mentioned, while we wait on results from Arizona, it'll be interesting to see how that vote goes. If you recall, Darius, in 2016 and 2020, Trump took the electoral votes in Arizona, where his margin of victory was one of the smallest for any Republican since Arizona's founding in 1912. So it'll be interesting to see which direction that goes in Arizona. But until those official numbers come in, let's take a look at some of our local races.
Yes, thank you, Crystal. Right now, we're looking at the updates for the local races. And we have, for the Bexar County Sheriff election, we have Javier Salazar sitting at 58% of votes with 330,520 votes against Nathan Buchanan. For the Bexar County Commissioner Precinct 1, we have Rebecca Clay Flores, Democrat incumbent, with 59% of the votes at 68,684 votes. For next, we have the Bexar County Commissioner Precinct 3, the largest precinct in San Antonio. We have Grant Moody in the lead with 55% of the votes at 112,762 votes. For Bexar County Constable Precinct 2, we have Leticia Rodriguez Vasquez, Democrat incumbent, with 76,184 votes and 63% of the votes. Most of these races are pretty far off, but we won't decide a winner until they're done. Right now, we have the difference: Javier Salazar at 58% and Nathan Buchanan at 42%. Rebecca Clay Flores, we have 59%, and Lena Prado 41%. Grant Moody is 55%. Susan Corbell is at 45%. Bexar County Constable Precinct 2, Leticia Rodriguez Vasquez at 63%, and Paul Alexander Canales at 37%.
If you remember, Darius, the race for Precinct 3 is actually a rematch from 2022 between Grant Moody and Susan Corbell. And with Grant Moody taking the seat then, we'll see how it goes this time around.
Yes, we definitely will. It seems to be pretty close. It was pretty close at first, and now it's starting to get further away. But like I said, we won't know until everything's finished. As far as for the election night, we want to thank everybody for joining in with us for our first ever election night in Texas A&M San Antonio history. We wouldn't be able to do this without our amazing team. First of all, thanking Dr. Brantley, Benji Mendoza, the whole NYC lab for making this all possible tonight. And thank you for everybody who tunes in, because y'all help support us and make this possible.
It's really amazing to see the growth that's taken place here on the south side of San Antonio on our campus. We were told that enrollment for the fall 2024 semester is the highest it's ever been, with a 2.1% increase from the previous fall semester. The university actually anticipates having a student body increase from 7,300 students to 8,750 by fall of 2025.
And also, here at Texas A&M San Antonio, we're one of the fastest growing schools in the A&M network. Right now, A&M San Antonio is currently building a new 4-story residence hall with 364 beds to accommodate the growing student population. The new residence hall is scheduled to be completed in summer 2024.
So with these numbers growing, I really hope that we get to continue this program and do more live coverage as more events take place in our city.
Yes, definitely. We're a fast-growing campus, and we're going to have to try to keep up with the enrollment numbers. Let's go back into an update for the national election. So right now at 9, we have 3 polling stations that are finna close. It's in Montana, Nevada, and Utah. So around 9 o'clock, we'll have more of a sense of which way these states are going. As of right now, we have President Donald Trump with 178 electoral votes and Vice President Kamala Harris with 99. Right now we have Florida with 95% reporting and Donald Trump with 56.2%. Georgia is still reporting at 77%, and Donald Trump, it looks like it's swinging towards the red with 52.4% of the votes. And in Michigan, we have it swinging blue with 14% only reporting so far. We have Kamala Harris with 52.5% of the votes. As we said earlier, we have Arizona expected to be done polling around 9 o'clock, and we have Nevada that's expected to be done around 9 o'clock as well. As Benji mentioned earlier, we have Senator Ted Cruz who took the most of the votes for the Texas Senate race.
So taking a look at some of those updates for the Senate races, it does look like Ted Cruz is falling just behind a little bit at 41%, with Colin Allred ahead at 57%. And going back to our local, going back to some local numbers, we have the Bexar County Sheriff Javier Salazar at 58%, with Nathan Buchanan running just behind at 42%. And in County Commissioner Precinct 1, we have Rebecca Clay Flores, who is running at 59%, and Lena Prado at 41%. Then in County Commissioner Precinct 3 race, we have Grant Moody still ahead at 55%, and Susan Corbell at 45%. And lastly, for the County Constable Precinct 2, we have Leticia Rodriguez Vasquez at 63%, and Paul Alexander Canales at 37%.
Yes, and just for another update for the national elections, we have for the U.S. Representative District 15, we have Monica De La Cruz and Michelle Vallejo. De La Cruz is in the lead with 73% of the votes as of right now, with 20,247 votes. For State Representative District 121, we have Mark LaHood, Republican, and Laurel Jordan Swift, Democrat. LaHood is in the lead with 52% of the votes and 42,606 counted for LaHood. For State Representative District 118, we have John Lujan with 52% of the votes against Kristen Carranza, Democrat, with 48% of the votes. Let's see, we have an update. So right now we're still sitting at 178 electoral college votes for Trump and 99 for Harris. Right now we're going to kick it to Alana for an update on the positions.
All right, thank you so much. Tonight we are going to be talking a little bit more about those propositions that we spoke about earlier today. We do have an unofficial report from bearcounty.org, and so we have a little bit of a summary of how those propositions have turned out. So for Proposition A, which is going to be for that definition of, oh my goodness, I'm blanking, but it's defining a term of conflict of interest. There we go. And so that is going to be 71% for and 28% against. The total amount of votes cast for that one is going to be 331,117 voters. So of those voters, 71% are for that definition. And then for Proposition B, we have 68% for, 31% is going to be against, and we have less voters who actually voted on that one. In case you didn't know, you can opt out of voting for these propositions if you don't know what you're voting for. And then for Proposition C, which has gotten quite the amount of attention across our local news, of course, we've gotten so many ads from the city in the last couple of weeks, and it's risen some disagreements between some people. So this one is going to be one that everybody is looking out for. And it looks like it was quite the close vote, with 53% for the Proposition C and 46% against. And like we said, this is unofficial, but this is from Bexar County, so this is what they are projecting. And about 340,000 voters turned out for that one, so it seems like voters found that pretty important. And then for Proposition D, we're going to have 61% of voters for, 38% against, and we have about 337,000 voters out for that one. And then Proposition E is going to be 63% for, 36% against, and this is going to be the one where we are raising the salaries of the managers in the city council. And we've got about the same amount of voters for Proposition D with E. It's going to be about 337,000. And then we have Proposition F, and this is going to be the one about the term limits. So like we said earlier, it's going to be relatively similar. It's just going to change up the amount of times that we're having to change over the power and like go back and forth. Obviously, you can get a lot more done in 4 years than 2 years, and so without having to transfer the power back and forth, we may see some more benefits for our city. But for this one, we have 53% for and 46% against, and so we have 341,000 voters out for that one. That one's going to have a similar turnout to Proposition C, and so a lot of voters seem to have come out to vote for Proposition C and Proposition F today. And then if you're interested, there are a lot of other San Antonio projections on bearcounty.org, so feel free to look at those for yourselves. All right, we're going to go ahead and get it back to the desk. Thank y'all so much.
I would like to just take a moment and correct the statement that I said earlier. I was looking at just the county page when I said that Ted Cruz had fallen behind. That race has been called here in Texas, and Ted Cruz is the new U.S. Senate for Texas, taking it over at 53%. So I would like to just go back just a second and correct a statement from earlier. Looking at the Bexar County numbers, it looked like Ted Cruz had fallen behind. However, the state of Texas has already called the race, and Ted Cruz did take the lead at 53% over Colin Allred. Just looking at some of the other U.S. representatives, the District 15 race has gone to Monica De La Cruz at 75% over Michelle Viejo. And we're looking at Jay Furman, who is running ahead at 51% over Henry Cuellar, the incumbent, with 49%. District 118 State Representative John Lujan is running ahead at 52% over Christian Carranza. And State Representative in District 121, Mark LaHood, is ahead also at 52% over Laurel Jordan Swift at 48%. Now, Darius, would you like to talk about the county commissioner races?
Yes, I can talk about those. So for the county commissioner, we have, For the county commissioner, we have Rebecca Clay Flores and Lino Prado. Rebecca Clay Flores is in the lead with 59% of the votes. And then for Bexar County Commissioner Precinct 3, we have Grant Moody in the lead with 55% of the votes at 112,762 votes for him. Going back into the national election, we have 188 electoral college votes for President Donald Trump and 99 for Vice President Kamala Harris. Currently, we are still waiting for Nevada, Arizona, and Montana to finish closing, and Utah also, for us to get a more clear picture of where this election is heading.
And as I stated before, back in 2016 and 2020, Trump did take the total electoral votes for both Arizona and Nevada. So it'll be very interesting to see which direction those states go. Are they going to continue running Democrat? I apologize. Are they going to continue in supporting Trump, or are they going to support Kamala Harris?
It's a really tricky question because a lot of times we never know until the polling is done which way these states are going to go.
That's right.
So they might be up right now, but towards the end, we never know.
So Darius, did you vote this election?
Yes, I did. I think it's very important to cast your vote, to get your voice heard, and to get laws passed for you, because there's no one else that will speak up for you unless you do the voting. And unless you put your vote in, your voice will never really truly be heard. So by voting, I think it's our civic duty to do that, and just to get the laws and everything to where you want it to be, or how you want it to be.
That's absolutely right. I know that Bexar County did mention that it was expecting a lower number of turnout at the early voting this time around, but we did have almost 50% of voters vote in the early election, which was really nice to see here on campus, considering that we do have our own voting spot available at the Mays Center. There are several at other colleges and schools around the county. However, the Mays Center did have easy access for voters for this election.
Especially for busy students here at Texas A&M San Antonio. If they're just getting out of class, they could go straight to the Mays Center and put their vote in, and they don't have to worry about rushing back to campus to get back in time for the next one. I know there's been several other locations in San Antonio as far as libraries and schools, high schools, middle schools, for people to go place their votes. So as far as availability, I'm pretty sure there's a polling station that you can go vote at very close to you.
And in consideration of how many students we have here on campus that also have full-time jobs, that was a great opportunity for them to just walk right up, go and vote. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah, and I know for me, I'm always on the go. I'm always trying to hurry back home after I'm getting out of class, or hurry to class because I don't wake up on time, and you know how it goes.
That's right. So let's go back and take a look at some of the numbers coming in for the charter amendment, or the propositions that Alana and Jonathan spoke about earlier. So for Proposition A, we have for Proposition A sitting at 72%, with 28% sitting against Proposition A, which would impact the Ethics Review Board. Taking a look at Amendment Proposition B, which is the modernization of language, we have the for vote sitting at 68% and against at 32%. For Proposition C, which pertains to the city manager's tenure and pay salary, we have 54% of the vote sitting at for and 46% sitting at against.
It's a pretty close one, a lot closer than the other ones.
Absolutely.
And for the SA Charter Amendment Proposition D, we have 62% for, with a total of 208,939 votes, and 128,999 votes against, total of 38%. Next, we have the SA Charter Amendment Proposition E, which involves city council pay. We have 214,000 votes for, which is 64% of the votes. And then we also have 123,066 votes for against, which is 36% of the votes. For SA Charter Amendment F, for the city council terms, we have 53% for and 47% against.
with almost a half dozen proposed changes to the San Antonio City Charter. This is a lengthy ballot for tonight for the city of San Antonio.
Yeah, and the city charter can only be changed every 2 years, and the Charter Review Commission will be assembled by the mayor to come up with 6 possible amendments. Here's a breakdown of each of those propositions. For Proposition A, the Ethics Review Board, we have, it would add a definition for conflicts of interest, require adequate funding for the board, and authorize the board to accept or decline complaints that have been resolved elsewhere. For Proposition B, we have language modernization, updates outdated and superseded language, but is not meant to make any substantive change to the proposition. For Proposition C, pertaining to city manager tenure and pay, it will remove both caps and allow the city council to set the terms of the city manager's contract.
For Proposition D, political activity for city employees would allow city employees to participate in local political activities while protecting against retribution. And for Proposition E, council pay raise, this would raise council and mayor salaries to $70,200 and $87,800, starting with council members elected in May 2025. And finally, Proposition F, the city council terms would create 4-year terms beginning with the May 2025 election, where council members would still be limited to 8 years in office.
Thank you, Krista, for that. Just a quick update on the national election. We have 198 electoral votes for President Trump, and then we have 99 electoral votes for Vice President Kamala Harris. So right now, we have 80% reporting in Georgia, 95% are reporting in Florida, and 4% reporting in Arizona. But right now we're gonna toss it to Jonathan Peña for an update on the propositions.
Okay. Thank you, Darius. Now we have the Texas presidential general elections around San Antonio, with the counties around San Antonio, local counties around San Antonio. Candidates, President Trump is leading with 73.7% against the challenger, Vice President Harris, 25% in Comal County. In Kendall County, we have President Trump leading 77.6%, and Vice President Harris, challenger, 21.5% behind. In Guadalupe County, around San Antonio, we have President Trump, 64.6%, and Vice President Harris, 34.6% challenger. In the Texas presidential general election. In Wilson, we have Vice President Harris and in Wilson, there is no current votes right now. No updates in Wilson right now. In Medina County, President Trump is leading 71.5% against challenger Vice President Harris, 27.9%. Bandera County, President Trump is leading with 81.4%, and Vice President Harris is the challenger behind 7.9%. In Gonzales County, President Trump is leading with 78.5%, while Vice President Harris is behind with challenger behind 21%. That is all I have. Going back to you, Darius, on the desk.
Thank you, Jonathan, for that update. You know, Darius, this has really been a lot of work keeping up with all of this information all night long, trying to follow along with our KSAT sources and some of the other information. So I think now we're going to go to a break where we will bring back Benji, who will give us our next update.
Good evening, San Antonio, or good night. It's getting a little bit late in our evening coverage. We've got a lot of interesting things going on in the polls, but we thought we would lighten things up for you and bring the girls to the table where we belong. And so we've got some fun things to talk about. I know that I am super active on social media, and I'm sure you are too.
I definitely am. I'm a lover of TikTok.
Oh my gosh, it's a dangerous habit to get into. I'm pretty sure I need to decrease my screen time.
Don't even get me started, girl.
I know, and then especially since obviously this is election coverage, I've had a lot of election going on my For You page. We've got the TikTok lives. How do you feel about people sending gifts to these TikTok livers about election night?
You know, personally, I would like to say, as long as we're all voting and casting our voice, making sure our voice is heard, truly that's all that matters. However, personally, I don't agree with that.
No, I totally agree. I'm like, people are out here spending their hard-earned dollars. Look at the economy we're living in. I don't know about you, but I can hardly afford to go to dinner at McDonald's, much less spend $20 on these gifts on TikTok Live.
Exactly. And you honestly don't even know who's going to be looking at that gift. Like,
I know.
It's not like you're endorsing the
Right.
candidate on TikTok Live.
Yeah, I'm like, I promise Donald Trump and Kamala Harris do not care about your roses on TikTok Live. But it's been super interesting to watch the polling that they're building based on these TikTok Lives. I know that some of the creators that I've stumbled across on my For You page are making legitimate polls about this. It's really interesting.
It is super interesting. I will also note that first thing this morning, as soon as I opened up Instagram, it let me know that today was election day with all the supplementary information available to you.
It sure did. Yeah, it's right up at the top of your stories. It had a little circle. If you're active on Instagram, you would have seen this. And it has the vote across it. And then they included a sticker that if you add it to your post automatically gets fed into this story for all of your friends to see. And then, of course, they're including polling sites, how to get registered to vote, as some states include same-day registration. Texas does not, but like Wisconsin, I know does or did this year at least. And so all of that information was available to us on social media. What a day we live in.
What a day, especially in a day like today where you can change your profile picture temporarily to let others know that you were voting in this election.
Yes, absolutely. Those profile changes are so funny to watch on Facebook. I know it's probably a little bit more popular amongst the older generations, but I definitely did it just like I took a picture with my I voted sticker.
Absolutely, you have to let the world know what's going on.
Exactly. Everyone has to know what's going on in my life. Of course,
Pics
that's
or
the-
it didn't happen.
Right, exactly. I'm like, did you really even vote if you didn't wear your sticker, if you didn't post a selfie?
Right.
Yep. So that is what's going on social media. But I thought it would be interesting to talk about some of the elections we remember from being children. Obviously, this is such a cool opportunity to be a part of with Texas A&M University San Antonio. And so I remember growing up and watching the ladies on the news talking about the elections, and how cool is it that us ladies get to sit up here tonight?
So weird. I definitely never imagined myself being in this position, but it is pretty cool and I feel pretty special.
And you've actually literally rocked it. You've done such an incredible job tonight. It's been so fun watching all of our anchors. And I remember, I think the first election I remember staying up to watch was between Obama and Mitt Romney. And so my parents actually let me stay up throughout the duration of the night until that election was called to find out the winner of that. And I think that was in 2012. Yeah.
so.
And so I would have been roughly in 5th-ish grade. And so I was pretty young, 4th grade. And I remember we did mock elections in the classrooms. Did you ever do that growing up?
Honestly, I don't think my school ever participated in mock elections. What was that like?
Yeah, so we had a teacher, and I'm not sure if this would fly in public schools these days, but our teacher allowed us to go up and cast our votes on the bulletin board, and it was really interesting. I moved to San Antonio in 5th grade, and growing up in a very small town, it was such a different cultural area, and so seeing like more diversity was super incredible. I actually loved seeing everybody's opinions, and Contrary to today, everybody was pretty receptive.
Yeah, so definitely I can imagine what that was like. Could you tell me a little bit about, is this your first time voting? Have you voted before? What has that experience kind of been like for you?
Yeah, this was my first presidential election to vote in, although I did vote in midterms in 2022 for the governor race. And so I remember that being super historic. I have no idea what else is on the ballot. I didn't pay enough attention to politics back then, but I'm glad that I've gotten more into it now, and I'm a little bit more educated about what I'm voting in.
Absolutely, especially with all this election night coverage, I'm
Yes.
sure you feel very prepared about who's all on the ballot.
Yeah, when was the first time you voted?
So the first time I voted was for the presidential election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump.
Oh, yeah.
So it was definitely very cool. It was 2020 election.
Yes.
So middle of COVID, definitely, you know, a little uncertain about everything at that
Absolutely.
point. Similar like today.
Yes.
But it was very interesting. I definitely wanted to take part in voting. I knew it was important. However, similar like you, I didn't do enough research like I probably should have. And yeah, I went ahead and voted then. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, so did you mail in your ballot or did you vote in person? I know that procedures were a little bit different due to
Right.
the COVID protocols.
Yeah, so I actually voted in person
Oh, wow.
with my county, and it was super easy, super seamless. There wasn't that many people there, so it was in and out, quick and easy.
That's so awesome. Well, I'm so glad that you got to experience the full voters experience for your first time. I know that a lot of people tended to stick to that mailing in of their ballots this election. And so I'm super curious to see like the number ratio compared to 2020, obviously with the procedures being super different.
Right.
I'm curious to see if a lot of people stuck with that or if they were ready to get back into the tradition of going and voting.
And casting your vote, exactly. We'll definitely be getting that information soon, so hopefully we'll read up on that.
That'll be so exciting to see. I'm always so intrigued to see, like, because, I mean, people are creatures of habit. Like, I sit
Absolutely.
in the exact same spot in my classroom every day, and Dr. Brantley can attest to that. I sit in the same spot every day, as do most of my classmates, because we are such creatures of habit. And so when I feel like, especially if it was a first-time voter mailing in their ballot, that's just what they
Right,
know,
you
that's
would-
what they do, and they don't want to get too uncomfortable and having to go out and try something that they've never done before.
Exactly. I feel like that would be very uncomfortable, especially because, you know, for me, I went in person. It was the middle of COVID, but I really thought it was important to do it in person just because I really wanted to see what it was like. I wanted to kind of hear, not really hear, but like know the vibes of the election polls and see what was really going on. I felt like it was important as a woman voting in the presidential election.
Yeah, of course. And all of us girls have to get out and vote. I feel like we've seen such a margin of men voters this year when historically women actually tend to turn out to vote, especially early. Historically, women are better about turning in their paperwork to register early, and so I think that that's the difference there. But yeah, it's so awesome seeing how many women have voted, and we're actually already starting to get numbers from those polls of how many women turned out to vote this election.
It's just fascinating. It's so
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, so many demographics have turned out to vote this election cycle, and so it's going to be super awesome to watch.
Yeah, so if you got a chance to vote in this election, and especially if you're a woman voter who got a chance to vote in this election, thank you, thank you. We're so excited to hear what America chooses.
Yeah, we stand with you. Of course, women sitting at this table, we're so excited to have had you tonight. And so we're going to go ahead and go on break, and we'll see you here in a little bit.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, good job, girls. That was phenomenal. I love the experience. I love speaking about elections. This is a beautiful moment in American history and in our university as well. For the first time, congratulations to Texas A&M University San Antonio. That was our first all-female desk cast. Very proud moment for us here at Texas A&M San Antonio. Beautiful, impactful moment for us. Now, what I have up here, making a quick transition, there are 10 governor races tonight. We were going to save a little bit more for later on tonight, but 10 governor races are going on tonight when it comes down to the Democrats and the government opposition party, GOP. So far, it is 22-25 in favor of the GOP. We have Vermont going to Phil Scott. That it has been called by 80%. Very for me, surprising. New Hampshire is one that everybody has been looking at again when it comes down to the election, when it comes down to the governor race. Governor Kelly Ayotte was going against Ms. Joyce Craig in New Hampshire. 53% of it right now has been coming on in. That's 51% to Kelly Ayotte. Right now, she is holding on. The Republican governor, Kelly Ayotte, is holding on to that governor spot. Surprising to some might be surprising, but to others it might be understood if you've been following the news of lately, and it's going to be North Carolina. North Carolina, for right now, when it comes down to the general presidential election, currently right now, North Carolina is leaning towards former President Donald Trump. But when it comes down to a key governor race, North Carolina, it's been called and it's done. Josh Steen has held on to the governor. He will be the new governor of North Carolina with 72% reporting against a current governor, what is now former governor Mark Robinson, the Republican. As we all know, there's been some controversy there in that very crucial governor race, and that is going to be going to Josh Steen. Now, North Dakota and Montana as well has been up for governor grabs, and that is what's putting right now, is surprising in North Dakota, Kelly Armstrong holding on, and it's been called for Kelly Armstrong in North Dakota and in Montana. Greg Gianforte is going to be holding on, going against the independent Kaiser Lieb, and Greg Gianforte is going to, they just started, I apologize, Montana just started making those counts right now. Washington, those results are expected later on at 10 o'clock, and Utah, a very important key state. We are expecting those results in Utah here very soon. Now, I want to transition this into now our presidential outlook for right now. It's getting really close, but I'm going to bring it back to Texas. I'm going to talk about some key races that have been going on in Texas. I believe with some of these numbers, some of these numbers in Texas. Yeah, thank you so much. As you see our updated map, Texas has been called for former President Donald Trump right now. Some of the key states, and I want you to note this. This is very interesting. This has been normally blue for years, but the coastline and the Rio Grande Valley with Cameron County going Republican. And right now, it is actually looking that the Rio Grande Valley, it might sweep into those key 3 counties, Hidalgo, Starr, and Cameron County. It looks like that might be going into some very key crucial moments when it comes down to that in the Rio Grande Valley. So we are keeping an eye on that. That is an interesting turn of events when it comes down to Texas. And I want to, I'll be honest with you, myself, being I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley, Hidalgo, Cameron County, and what is known as Corpus Christi. Right up here, that area going Republican. Very surprising numbers coming out of there. Now, when it comes down to the rest of the state, again, with already more than 4 million votes, it's already been called for former President Donald Trump. When it comes down, he wins all 40 electoral votes when it comes down to Texas. Now, what does this mean for the whole election? Now, the East Coast still, the West Coast still has yet to to close out, Nevada and Utah are going to be one of those that have just started. And I'm looking at my updated map right now. Utah just started their counts. Colorado just began. They're halfway through their counts. And so is Arizona and New Mexico. Three major states that we're looking here is going to be Nevada. We're going to be looking into Arizona and New Mexico that just began. Now, when it comes down to the whole presidential results and the electoral vote, as many of us know, the magic number when it comes down to the electoral vote will be 270. But when it comes down to the governor's race, that's going to be going 25 to 22. Right now, the GOP holding on to 25 governors of the United States currently right now. Again, surprising came in Vermont, and right now a very tight race in New Hampshire when it comes down to the governor race. Now, in the national stage, and we're starting to see now, as we're starting coming in at 9:30, it's going to get these last 3 minutes, as these moments start coming in. Typically, we would see California lean more towards Kamala. However, towards the Democrat, for Vice President Kamala Harris, that is the anticipated winning in California. We've seen this in the past where the East Coast and the West Coast normally, or you can see that normally tends to go on the Democrat side. But for right now, we're not even going to, that's not even something that I don't know how it's going to work out, because currently right now, Utah just started reporting, so has Arizona, so has Nevada. Now, what we're looking at currently right now, former President Donald Trump is holding on to 198 currently. We're still waiting on Pennsylvania, a very key state. 19 electoral votes in Pennsylvania. And right now, for what it's looking, they're still getting those counts in, but it's looking like it's leaning a little bit to former President Donald Trump. So is Wisconsin and Minnesota. Iowa, with 6 electoral votes, is currently a little bit in favor. We got about 41% reporting according to our sources there. Key races in San Antonio. We're going to recap those key races here in San Antonio. Pulling away when it comes down to these numbers with what it looks like with 2 districts I want to look into, 3 districts I want to look into there. District 28, when it comes down to San Antonio. I'm going to leave this map up here because it is coming into the 9:30 hour of Central Time, and some polls are going to start coming in when it comes down to the West Coast. And as you can see, some of these are going to be changing. The map will update here in a little bit. It is 9:30. We're going to be hitting that 10 o'clock hour, and it's going to be one of those moments that we're going to be going back in. But when it comes down to the district houses in Texas, when it comes down to district... Stream drop? Yeah, we dropped. Okay. We're back. Are we live? Bring it back just a little bit. I don't know where we lost you. Okay, I'm just going to go bring it back to Texas. I know the last 2 minutes. Hey, that's fine. It's Texas. Okay. Now, bringing it back down to state of Texas, I'm going to recap this really quick. Texas, again, has been called for former President Donald Trump. Now, when it comes down to a key Senate race, and we're going to get into this in a little bit, when it comes down to the House and the Senate, there's some key House races and some very key Senate races. Now, it's not just about the presidential election. There's some key Senate races that are going to be very important when it comes down to this historic election. For right now, what it's looking like, from what I might be seeing, is the majority, the magic number when it comes down to the Senate is going to be 50. That gives you the majority in the Senate. Now, when it comes down to the House, the majority number there is going to be 218. Right now, the GOP is going to be 132 right now to the GOP to 89. There are also some very key House results that are going to be coming in real soon. Now, when it comes down to our Senate race, again, the magic number for the majority is going to be 50. Some key states that we're looking into is Minnesota. That's going to be Royce White against Amy Klobuchar. That's going to be a key race. And then again, the very important state of Pennsylvania. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania could be the deciding factor tonight when it comes down to the Senate race, as well as the map when it comes down to the overall race of the United States presidency election. It's an electrifying night, but when it comes down to those moments, we can definitely make sure that we can get those numbers here. Now, we are reaching into the 9:30 hour of our broadcast. When it comes down to this, I'm gonna take a little break here at 9:30. We're gonna go a little break, and we're gonna be bringing it back to Dr. Brantley, and we're gonna break it down. We're gonna be staying live at 10 o'clock, and we're gonna do our best to see what numbers we can get when it comes down to the 10 o'clock hour as we close out. But it's getting tight, folks. I want to thank you all for joining into this very special live election night here at Texas A&M San Antonio. We're going to be right back as we close out these last 30 minutes of our live broadcast here at Texas A&M San Antonio. Welcome back, folks. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. With us now back on our desk, we have our very beloved Dr. Brantley, as we call him here. Dr. Brantley, we are moving into our last 30 minutes of this special live election here at Texas A&M San Antonio. Let's begin really quick before we dive into some of these U.S. maps and results. It's been an amazing experience so far. It's been great.
That is true. It has been. I'm not sure if I would have had a real expectation of what tonight was going to be like, but I think I expected it to be crazier and less straightforward. This has turned out to be very calm and very straightforward so far.
Our reporters have done an absolute great job in bringing information locally when it comes down to our propositions, yes, our sheriff race, which I believe KSAT is reporting, according to KSAT, is reporting that when it comes down to Bexar elections, Javier Salazar is going to stay as Bexar County Sheriff for a couple more years here. And then when it comes down to some certain precincts, the biggest precinct right now, as far as reporting so far, Republican Grant Moody hasn't been called by KSAT, but it looks like Republican Grant Moody, the incumbent, will stay in San Antonio's largest precinct of Precinct 3.
All right, interesting.
And so when it comes down to a couple more, when it comes down to our senator races, I want to keep it local here. when it comes down to San Antonio, it wasn't. It was a pretty big wide margin between Senator Ted Cruz and the challenger Colin Allred. I believe 57% of the San Antonio vote to 41 went in favor of Colin Allred. Overall, in the state of Texas, Senator Ted Cruz holds on to that very crucial Senate seat, which as of right now is sitting at 48 on the GOP and 36 on the Democrat side. The majority number there in the Senate is 50, and that's going to give, if one more Senate race is being called, as we are looking into Pennsylvania, Ohio, Minnesota, and Montana, as those states are getting called in the Senate race, we're going to continue it going. Now, one important thing that we talked about earlier while we were looking and doing our research is there's been some flips when it comes down to the House of Representatives, to the U.S. House. Right now, the government opposition is 135 to 89. So that's something that if it comes down to these key races and these results hold, it might seem that the GOP in the Senate and the House might be the majority so far.
That is what it's looking like. It's too early to say. As I tried to emphasize at the beginning of this, we are not in the business of calling races. We are not in the business of forecasting. We are not in the business of doing the election math of how many votes someone needs to get from the votes that are left. But yes, it does look like the GOP will control Congress.
It might look like it, according to our sources.
Could control Congress.
We're going to bring it now to the very crucial presidential results. It's coming down to 0 hour, Dr. Brantley.
Is.
It is about 9:34, 9:40. We got a couple more states that will be closing at 10 o'clock. That would be Alaska and Hawaii. But I believe here in a little bit, Nevada is going to start giving results soon. Results are expected to close at 10 o'clock in California. Results are expected to close, I'm sorry, it's 10 o'clock in California, but that's midnight Central Time, will be Alaska. And then Hawaii will be at 11 o'clock in Hawaii. We'll be seeing a couple more results coming in. Now, Oregon again and Washington, 10 o'clock. So we're expecting that West Coast, which could completely turn these things around, give Vice President Kamala Harris a little bit more of an advantage. But for right now, let's talk about these numbers. I want to see these maps for right now, Doc. It looks like we are looking what to what.
So I am the source that I'm looking at right now. I mentioned Decision Desk HQ at the beginning of our show tonight. That's what I'm looking at right now. Decision Desk HQ has called the state of Georgia for former President Trump. This pushes, according to Decision Desk HQ, this pushes Trump's electoral vote total up to 242 now.
Wow. Okay.
242 for Trump, and they've got 108 for Harris. And a lot of this is still projecting, but Decision Desk HQ has done pretty well, and they're pretty reliable in this department. If this all holds true, this would mean Trump only has to find 28 more electoral votes, and he is currently leading, according to the count that I'm looking at, he's currently leading in Pennsylvania by about 3%.
Okay.
He's currently leading in Wisconsin by almost 1%, so that, I think, we can still call neck and neck. Michigan is not as close as it was, but Trump is only behind 5% in Michigan. Those votes that he needs are there to be had.
And we're still waiting on Nevada, another state that is going to start doing tabbing elections. Arizona as well. For right now, Arizona has started its general election numbers, and it is tight there. It's 49.4 to 49.8 in favor of Vice President Kamala Harris. So we're looking at some very important numbers when it comes down to that. But the big surprise right now is that at this moment, before we go off at 10 o'clock, when it comes down to it, they're going to be looking for those 11 electoral votes in Arizona, as well as the big number of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which carries 19 electoral votes. So currently, right now, it's 242 to former President Donald Trump. But if Pennsylvania, let's just say, hypothetically, if Pennsylvania with about 60% of the polls right now, we're looking at about, I would say between 57 to 60% of the votes that have been counted. With this advantage, 48 to 51, according to our Decision Desk HQ, if this holds, it's just going to add on to this lead, 242, and you add on and you start tabulating and you add on those Pennsylvania electoral numbers of 19.
If he takes those 19 votes from Pennsylvania and gets well, we're not in the business of calling or forecasting, but if he gets, let's just say, how many votes does Wisconsin carry?
Wisconsin would carry over 10 electoral votes.
So those two states would push Trump to victory.
Yeah, those two states, Wisconsin tonight,
and Wisconsin.
Pennsylvania and Wisconsin are the ones that are looking at all eyes right now. And as you can see, we are going back and forth, researching as much as we can. It is, we spoke about this, and these are just now we're speaking on just our personal experiences when it comes down this. I had an idea that tonight we might have somebody. It's going to be interesting to see how the rest of this is going to be going on, how it's going to be projecting. But for right now, when it comes down to the state of Texas, it's looking that it's going to remain for what it is. And the city of San Antonio, there's really not much of a shift in San Antonio, with the exception of when it comes down to the Senate race. But when it comes down to our representatives, again, those are the things that we're looking at. According to KSAT, and I'm reading from these KSAT numbers, Monica De La Cruz is holding on, Republican. Jay Furman is now trailing Democrat Henry Cuellar when it comes down to, according to KSAT, with 57% of the vote. And when it also comes down to District 118, very tight there when it comes down to District 118. John Lujan, the third, is holding on to that one. But the flip earlier, Jay Furman was leading, the Republican Jay Furman was leading in Texas over the very popular Henry Cuellar in that district. And right now it just flipped. It's just 52% to 48% in favor of Democrat candidate here, Henry Cuellar, with about 57% reporting on that. Thoughts on that one right there?
It's not really surprising that you expect for San Antonio to go blue. You expect, honestly, and this is not just me, this is election forecasters, expect for the Rio Grande Valley to go blue. So I guess the only thing that's surprising about this is the margin, and that it's still in doubt at this point. Because it hasn't been called for Cuellar yet, but Furman is running out of time.
Things are still trying to get through, and things are still trying to get through when it comes down to the tallying from KSAT. So far, they only even have 10% according to KSAT. I'm on their website, and again, we're using our sources when we're reporting these. And a while ago, I had reported in precinct number 3, Republican candidate Grant Moody is, and we got, let's break this up right now. I believe we got some information. According to Fox, Iowa has gone to former President Donald Trump.
Interesting.
So that makes things. Let's add on that.
That's still that on it. So that was the number I was operating from just now. I guess Decision Desk called Iowa before Fox did.
Okay.
So this isn't. It's always news when another.
But still,
the more outlets, the more.
Yeah. So it confirms it. The more outlets we work from there, the more outlets. And we're looking at this right here. This is beautiful. Thank you guys, and we're going to be thanking our graphics right now. This is what we're looking at right now when it comes down to the key races in Texas. So when it comes down to the president and former President Donald Trump, I think it just the Republicans in Texas really, once again, really took over this election. This is beautiful to see. I love seeing these numbers right here: 4 million, 3 million.
Yeah.
Wonderful big numbers for Texas. That means everybody that could get out to vote actually got out to vote when it comes down to Texas. When it comes down to the key race, again, the Senate race in Texas is key. And we've all seen Senator Ted Cruz for a very long time. But when it comes down to these tabulations here, this is us here in Texas. San Antonio is still being counted right now. So there's nothing confirmed, but we're just giving you who is in the leadership position when it comes down to it. When it comes down to the very important race, when it comes down to our sheriff, that which everybody's been looking for, everybody's been talking about, that sheriff race has been really close when it comes down to Bexar County. And Bexar County right now, I'm going to give you this update right now when it comes down to Bexar County. But when it comes down to Bexar County, they're barely starting to reach those tabulations. Only 27 precincts out of the 302 precincts in San Antonio, according to KSAT, has been reported. But Republican Grant Moody is currently in the lead on that one. Democrat Clay Flores with a 59-49, 8% of the precincts. However, we do have some key representative key races. This is now 75% reporting when it comes down to the state representative, which is very important for the state of Texas, and when it comes down to us. So when it comes down to it, go ahead, Dr. Bradley.
Where did we stand on the Monica de la Cruz race?
54% with 65% reporting.
Okay.
She's now pulling away 46% to Michelle Vallejo.
Yes.
And 54%. So when it comes down to Decision Desk
has called that race in favor of Monica de la Cruz.
Wow, okay, so
the
Monica de la
incumbent
Cruz
keeps her seat.
remains. Wonderful. If we could go back, I just keep looking up at all these tabs when it comes down to this night. I am all eyes right now on Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, right now, according to Decision HQ, it's 49.5, 48.9 in favor of former President Donald Trump. Currently, right now, we're looking at 242 for former President Donald Trump. And as we were speaking, though, earlier, if with 60% of the vote in Pennsylvania, with about, according to Decision HQ, with 60% closely in Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, it could possibly be that within the next 30 minutes or an hour, it might look like, if things still holding on, again, we're not calling anything. This is according to our sources, and we're excited because historic moment, whoever wins for our country. But it looks like right now we might not have another President Joe Biden, former President Donald Trump scenario where we might go into the wee hours and into the next couple of days.
Yeah.
From what we're looking at, it might be tonight. That's what I'm anticipating. That's what I'm looking at when it comes down to it.
It is looking like a possibility. So I'm looking at the Decision Desk county by county map for Pennsylvania, and what we're still waiting on there, only 57% of the votes are in Philadelphia County, for example. There's a lot more to be counted there.
Philly is one of those. I mean, Philadelphia, like every other state. Chicago. I mean, Illinois went towards, and if you look at the map in Illinois, it was won by Vice President Kamala Harris, 53.5%, 45.1%. That has been called. That is 76% of the vote. But Chicago, and now Philly. So Philly is one of those things. We were wondering why the Vice President went to make her final stop in Philadelphia. Well, I think she knew exactly what was going to happen tonight.
She understood the importance of Pennsylvania.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I'm also looking, in addition to Philadelphia, we're waiting on Allegheny County, where Pittsburgh is. They only have 82% of the votes counted there. Dauphin County, where Harrisburg is, they've only got 43% of the votes counted there. So there's still there's still some waiting to do to
So-
see if Vice President Harris can overcome her current deficit.
Here's another interesting fact. Maine, up in New England, there's some of the first polls that close. Maine is one of the ones that close in the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock hour. However, according to our sources here, Maine has only got 6% of their vote in, according to these sources.
Yeah.
So, and but right now, when it comes down to percentage-wise, in Maine, we got 51% in favor of former President Donald Trump. Now, I want to come back to Arizona. Dr. Brownlee in Arizona, again, with 1,788,113 votes, 53%. We are moving into the 53% margin. It seems like it seems like Vice President Kamala Harris, by a very narrow margin, with 53%, is leading 49.7 to 49.5. If it comes down to Arizona, it's interesting. But however, that's one of those states out there. But when it comes down to the main important thing right now, it's 242. Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, all eyes on Wisconsin. We are going to be reaching our hour. We're going to be coming on here on 10. But again, for right now, key race is 62%, 19 electoral votes in Pennsylvania, with 10 electoral votes in Wisconsin, and 25% reporting when it comes down to that. When it comes down to that presidential race has been important. Now, Dr. Brownlee, I want to bring out, and folks that are tuning in, more than 9 million Texans.
Oh.
These are our information that we're getting. More than 9 million Texans either voted in person during the 2 weeks of early voting or returned their absentee ballots by November 1st. That's what the state data is showing currently right now.
Yeah.
That's a 48.6% of all registered voters in 2020,
goodness.
which was 9.7 million, or 57.2% of registered voters went to the polls or turned in their ballot during early voting.
So let's look at what those numbers mean. So that 48.6% that applies to this election, that is only early voting and absentee ballots that were returned by November 1st. That is 0 of the people who went to the polls today. And you compare that to 4 years ago, 57.2% total. So we're looking at just a huge turnout, it seems like. I think
No, go ahead, finish.
a huge turnout for the state of Texas, and that is, it's weird that we have to say this, but that's a good thing. It's good that we go out and make our voices heard. Even if whoever we vote for doesn't win, that's not the point. The point isn't to try and pick the winner, and then the point is to help determine the direction that the ship of state is sailing.
Dr. Brownlee, beautifully put. I love that. As an American, as a veteran of this country, I'm just happy that Americans got out and voted. I think these are numbers that no matter, again, like you said, whoever wins, it's a fact that America showed up to the voting polls, and we cannot, there's no doubt in my mind that I can say, you know what, in this election, at least you got out there to vote. We're going to eliminate any of those processes. Now, Dr. Brownlee,
Yes, sir.
Congratulations. We're moving into the last 10 minutes of our live broadcast. We are not calling anything tonight, but we are going to leave you with this from our moment, with 10 minutes to go before the 10 o'clock hour. For right now, when it comes down to the electoral votes, it is 242 right now to former President Donald Trump, to Vice President Kamala Harris, at 108 electoral votes at the moment. When it comes down to our decision HQ, now this is what they're saying. Their projected numbers between 10 and 11, they're projecting, remember the magic number is 270, but according to Decision HQ, the way things are looking at, the way these numbers are getting tallied out, we're going to leave you this. It is projected by, again, Decision Desk HQ, that it'll be 284 votes for former President Donald Trump to 254 to Vice President Kamala Harris. Those are the projected votes, and that is because the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, in California have not been called, but it's a tight race in Arizona. It's a tight race in Pennsylvania. It is a tight race in Wisconsin and Maine.
Yes.
It's incredible how this is going to go on. Now, one last thing, New Jersey, we were talking about this earlier. It's starting to flip. So things are going to get exciting. Stay tuned to whoever you're going to get to. Dr. Brantley, I want to thank you so much for being here with us, for allowing this vision. One last time, how do you feel?
This is, so, okay. I'm always proud of my students, okay? Any of the people out there, if you are friends with me on social media, you are bored by now with how often I brag on my students. This very second, this is the proudest I've ever felt about a group of students. I am having a hard time holding it together.
Beautiful.
So I'm going to stop
and
talking.
You're going to make me hold. I'm not much of an emotional man, but you know what? Let me shake your hand. You did it, Dr. Brantley. We thank you. This could not be done possible without the whole Jaguar, Texas A&M, San Antonio, Department of Communication teams. We've had an excellent number, and I'm going to start bringing people in. I want to start with my back room. We have some executive technical directors in the back, beginning with Mr. Art Guile, with Mr. Nicky Maldonado Haskins, Nadia Robledo, Cody Escobar, Jesus Delgado, Lynn Nierman, and our support dog, Ms. Lynn. And with our support dog, come back, guys, come on back here. Stay on screen. Come on back. Stay on screen.
Yeah, come on, everybody.
Stay on screen, please, wherever we can come back over.
This was not a walk-by. This was a
is
stay
not
out
a walk
here.
by. We might want to show off Miss Lula right here.
Yes,
but
indeed.
big shout out to Miss Lynn. Miss Lynn, wave to everyone. She is one of our mentors. She works really hard to really keep us going. She's been really essential to keeping us going. And then we have our social media team. Beautiful job, our social media team, holding on to Texas A&M San Antonio, Brian Lopez and Christopher Valdivinos. And one of our room technicals, Mr. Trey Delgado, come back on over here. I didn't announce your name with the group, but big shout out with Mr. Trey Delgado. He was over here. This is Mr. Chris Villalobos, Trey, Brian, who, as you can see with our social media directions, have been going over there.
Okay.
Cody, come on over here. Cody Escobar, one more time. These gentlemen have been here over the last week trying to get this production value going. Cody, thank you so much.
I want to say, as much as any one person did, Trey Delgado made this happen.
Absolutely. He kept it going. He kept our string going. So kudos to Mr. Trey Delgado. Now, when it comes down to our war room, Emily Hernandez and Mr. Joe Ramon, all these graphics that you'll be seeing here, and Miss Vivian Zuniga,
already
Miss
left.
Melanie Reyes. This is our graphic time. Stay on here. Ladies,
come on.
If without you, and another round of applause to you girls, because without you, we wouldn't be able to hold on to these graphics. And then when it comes down to it, let's not forget our brave student reporters of the night. Cameron Caldwell, Ms. Nevenka Gomez, Miss Alana, Miss Alyssa, who was here, Jonathan, Miss Crystal, Mr. Darius, come on up here. This has been our brave reporting team. Come on over here to the other side. This has been our brave student body reporting team. Dr. Brantley, brag about these fine students.
Okay, I don't know about anybody's individual experience with doing stuff in class, with doing stuff with video, but as far as I know, every one of our anchor teams tonight was new at being an anchor team. And this wasn't just doing stuff for a class project. This is going live and dealing with live information as it's coming in and incorporating those new results that come in with a whole bunch of very good prep work with expertise that you guys developed just by working at it real hard. So again, I am incapable of telling you right now how proud I am of all of you.
Well, folks,
I said we were excited. I said I thought everybody was going to like what we were going to see. You guys made that happen.
Beautiful. Round of applause for you all. And you know what? Don't leave yet, because now we're coming up with 2 more minutes. Our camera guys, our technic team back there is giving us our 2 minutes. I want us all to say good night. as part, and I want to say from Texas A&M San Antonio, for Texas A&M University San Antonio, this is your live team, Jaguar TV, okay? So folks, thank you so much for joining us here on YouTube on Enlace Media Labs at Texas A&M University San Antonio. Ready, folks? This is Texas A&M University San Antonio, live on election night. Good night.
Buenas noches.
Yeah, we're